Right, let's press all the buttons. Good evening. Sound check. Let's just get everything going here. Too many computers, too many windows. Good afternoon. Wassalamu alaikum to any secular Quranists and Tommy Robinson fans. And shalom to my Jewish brothers and sisters. And peace be with you all to any Christians. Master IC3, good evening. I was hoping you'd show up. Well, where do I begin? I've obviously been very busy. Things are going incredibly well at an accelerated rate. And to those who are aware of the other channels and the stuff around the artificial intelligence and the platform stuff, more on that good stuff later, and probably not on these IDs. But I wanted to weigh in because I have some time today. And I wanted to comment on a few things, particularly you chaps are very, very kind to send me constant links by DM. What do you think of this clip? Or what do you think of that clip? And the state of the right, the absolute state of the right, and the state of race relations in the right have been a forefront, because I've had lots of arguments recently. And to those who know what I do, I tend to go into very hostile chat groups where I perform lots of, shall we say, very technical experiments on these chat groups. Those who are aware. There's a young, I made a young friend who's in the chat now. She's been observing probably with some glee as we've been running around trolling and teasing Nazis, though of course I'm doing this for a different purpose. But one thing that's come up a lot is the state of the right and polarization. And I wanted to talk about this for a bunch of reasons and to shine a bright white light on race and the right for a few reasons. One of them is we are at a very interesting juncture in all our models in terms of polarization. Where do we sit in UK politics? A lot of this goes to Western European politics. I've had some great recent things occurring with the FD, more on that later on a different channel. And of course, watching what's happening in the US and the culture war. Let's get the trannies, let the trannies be free. Trans lives matter, let's get the trannies. And these futilities of the culture war, etc., have brought a couple of things to mind. But recently, when you see these certain incidents occur, and for me, they particularly are stress tests for the models. And one thing that's come up again and again has been the media reactions to violent or highly caustic events. In this case, the Nottingham event. And I thought, why not have a quick little check about the state of England, the state of race and the right, particularly as most people here are going to be conservatives. Master IC3, it's so good you're here for this one. You're going to love this one. And I thought, well, let's have a little look and jump in, because I've got some good news and some bad news and some great news. So I don't know which order you want them. Some of the things I'm going to say here might come across as being ever so contrarian, but being contrarian is part of a critical mind. After all, seals clap. If you go into any of the chats, what I do is typically now I have something between 8 and 12 different sets of right-wing and left-wing channels. And what I do is I measure the polarity of both of them using my alt IDs to work out how much of an echo chamber they are, how can you disturb them, and what both sides reflect the same story. And the Nottingham attack particularly has been a great one. So what I want to do is first talk about it in the light of the Nottingham attack. Afternoon, Jamie, my man. I will sort out that other thing for you, Jamie, shortly. And I thought, well, let's look at the state of the right and race relations, particularly in the UK, though this will hold a lot for Western European nations, particularly, especially the US as well as Western Europe. And what can we see about where the right is running to a roadblock, a cul-de-sac? So I'm going to play a couple of videos. I'm also going to, of course, show some pieces of data that are quite pivotal. And yes, Connor, the FD doing more than flying. But again, we'll talk about that because there's the law of diminishing returns, and that's going to come up as well. And that's going to be part of the bad news, the law of diminishing returns. There's good news, and then there's very, very difficult great news. Now, some people say, is this going to be all about the Jewish? Is this the JQ? Well, of course, you know, if people mention the Jews will have to respond. But we're going to actually look at the great news when we refer to a particular speech by a particular Jewish person. The reason, and I'll refer to that in a second, but let's just jump straight in. To those who are not aware, there was an attack, if you're not from the UK, there was a random attack by a maniac in the UK who killed 3 complete random people in Nottingham. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at our good friends at the Lotus podcast, the Lotus Eating podcasters, whatever they're called. Carl's at the table. I have no issue with the people at the Lotus. I think Carl's a good chap. He's surrounding himself with lots of young lads. Some of them are quite amusing, but they recently were demonetized, and now he's shilling VPNs because that also points to the deeper structural models of what's going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at their review of Nottingham. We're then going to look at the deeper data as to why they're incorrect in their analysis or the futility of their analysis. We're then going to do something which is quite rare. I don't usually go to the Iranian agents. I don't listen to any of the one-dimensional thinkers, but apparently they also cover this, and they have the deepest respect for Master Morgoth. They also try to make sense of this and fail badly. Though in our models, it's quite clear what's occurring. So we're going to have a quick look, as difficult as it might be to listen to the Iranian agent. We're going to look at why they also fail. And then finally, we're going to look at something that's much more troubling, which is what would the solution be if the right can't win by itself and the left can't win by itself, and we know that a uniting force is needed, then what would the nature of that force be? What would its ontology look like? What would its spirit look like? So first, what we're going to do is we're going to have a little listen to the podcast of the lotus-eating chompers, or whatever they call themselves. And I'm going to be, if any of the Lotus Eater fans are watching, please be cognizant that my wit can be quite biting at times, and none of this is that personal, but I will have to revert to my usual form. So this is, I'm going to jump to where they begin covering this. The title is called The Absolute State of English. Carl obviously doing his thing. Obviously he's still recovering from being demonetized, and of his little crew, I can't remember this chap's name, so I call him Bilbo Baggins or Frodo, because he is basically a hobbit. And he's going to comment, and we're going to watch what him and Bilbo do as they try to make sense of this. But what I'm going to do is keep interrupting and pointing out the futility of the right. So, hey-ho, let's go.
A couple of days ago. Not Islamist. This was 3 people. I believe they were killed by a white man.
Just the average white van.
Average white man. And so, you know, local tragedy, act of God. Nothing could have been done. Yeah, no. We got the next one here. Daily Mail reported that it was a West African migrant with a history of petty drug dealing. And at no point did anyone think, well, maybe we should probably deport him then, if he's already breaking the laws on petty issues.
He has a series of criminal offences under his belt.
Diversity is our strength.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've done a segment about this going on the weekend, so we'll try not to focus on that too much, because that's one thing, and the difference of how to deal with that. I just want to check in on the English. How are you doing? Because what's the instant response from the people, let's say, closest? I don't know, the mothers of the people who have been killed. Well, for some reason, I mean, this is actually...
Before Bilbo goes on his soliloquy about this, notice what he says. And bear in mind this very sentence he says, and it's going to make a lot more sense later. What is the reaction of the closest, the mother of the people that means the most? So remember, ethno-nationalists, or people on the right of a thing, will be always argue for mer group, mer ethnos, mer collectivism, mer group. But of course, the group starts at the ones that you love the most, your family, your friends, you know, your parents, your children. And what's interesting is those that speak for the ethnos compared to those that speak at the ethnos. And we're going to see here a lot of facial expressions. You know how much I love facial muscles. And you can watch the frustration as the ideological right, in this case the DR, have no way to either grasp what's occurring, and there's no way to get out of what's occurring, but they can't believe what they're seeing and why they're seeing what they're seeing. Of course, they're going to pay lip service to the ones that are closest to us. Remember that very, very carefully, because the third thing we're going to play is going to be very salient. But take it away, Frodo.
Actually kind of creepy as an event in and of itself.
Yeah.
Local migrant kills some people, and the authorities of our nation decide to put on some kind of festival, almost. I mean, I know it's meant to be a vigil, is the idea, but why? Why, exactly, do you decide to do this and bring all the national media that you control?
And notice the question, either we're going to assume the question is sincere, and he's asking it genuinely, or the question is a rhetorical device. And we're going to look at some data as to why, and that is uncomfortable data. And the headline is, Britain is one of the most tolerant nations on the planet. By any metric of tolerance, racial tolerance, diversity, Britain is one of the most tolerant nations. So when you see both an outpouring of emotion for a completely random and unjustifiable attack, you also see an outpouring of the ethnos showing tolerance. And this, of course, is deeply troubling for the DR, because the DR believe ethnos are going to act as a collective swarm. And I'm going to give Frodo the benefit of the doubt and assume that his question is sincere and non-rhetorical.
to film it. Why do you do that? Usually, I remember when Lee Rigby was killed. I mean, what happens is local people put down some kind of plaques or murals or candles, and that's about it. But for some reason,
that's appropriate.
Yeah, but it's also natural and grassroots.
Yep.
Whereas for some reason, in recent years, when something else happens, I don't know, just for some reason, it also turns into some kind of Reading festival.
Now, yeah.
No, that's quite disrespectful. That turns into a Reading festival. Reading is a shithole, the festival and the town. But no. What's happening is, there's a reason it's happening. Now, obviously, these chaps don't understand anything about complex systems, emergence, swarms, clusters. They're obviously still in Newtonian one-dimensional thinking. But even if they did understand that, there's something even deeper going on. And we're going to talk about that. But this pouring out of the don't look back in anger, light the flag, light up my Facebook, this polarizing technique occurs on both sides of the equation. It occurs on the right as well as the left. But over here, there seems to be almost a kind of like a cognitive dissonance or cultural dissonance where he can't believe all these people have shown up and therefore there must be some sinister motive. There is a sinister thing going on too, and we're going to talk about that, but that's not the reason why it's happened. But again, I'm going to give credit to Frodo and assume his questions are non-rhetorical.
Yeah,
people.
Now it's a kind of weird sort of ritual they have to go through, right?
Yeah, and they have an assortment of people on the stage speaking, which I'm sure has all been naturally and organically put together from the grassroots, nothing else. And they have the mother up there, and the mother, I would presume, would have given a speech in a normal country where this has happened about how to stop this from happening in future, how much she missed her children who have been killed, how maybe if she's struggling, people can donate to try and pay for the funeral or cremation, because I might not be doing so well. This happens to all people. She might be talking about any number of things that would be relevant to her life. Instead, she gave a speech here, and the tagline is, "Please hold no hate to any race, color, sex, or religion in your heart." The primary concern was not what had happened. It was not her family. The thing that was presented as the primary concern was the state's position, the ideology of the state here.
Yeah. But what she's saying here, though...
That's incorrect. Not the state's position. That's a political statement, but a social position, a socio-cultural position of society. And once you can see the DR, you watch the facial expressions of Callum. Thanks, Chris. I don't want to keep calling him Frodo. That's rude. I can't remember his name. So no more calling him Bilbo. His name is Callum. So Callum and Carl both look, and you watch their facial expressions. Only about 5 or 8 minutes of this. And you watch their facial expressions, and you can't, your facial muscles can't lie. And you see that they literally just cannot understand what's happening. And part of the dissonance in the right is a refusal to accept certain core data on the board. And therefore, without accepting the core data on the board, they can't possibly provide a solution. We're going to look at the abject failure of the Reform Party reports, the abject failure of the right to do anything in the results because they're not playing the board correctly. Why didn't this woman come out and say, well, what about this? What about funeral expenses? Shouldn't she have come out and not spoken about society as a whole? When we play our third and final clip, we're going to hear from a man who I believe should get the Man of the Year award for what he said, which is something even more amazing than what she said. But that's for later.
Is that racism is worse than a murder?
Let's play it. Let's play this, because the event is weird in and of itself, in my opinion.
This evil person is just that. He is just a person. Please hold no hate that relates to any color, sex, or religion.
And there it is in their facial expressions. Now, I want you guys to understand this. I'm not, like I said, one has to be cruel to be kind. And I have no issues with the podcast of the Lotus Munchers or whatever they're called. But what you're seeing there is a look of suspended disbelief. When I said the goals a year and a half, the goals of the nationalist movement will not be delivered by nationalism. The goals of the ethnos movement to protect and defend English culture will not be delivered by something that does not represent English culture. What you're seeing there is English culture and a cognitive dissonance, as both Callum and Carl. I mean, Lewis Carroll was right. An image is worth more than 1,000 words. Their faces cannot compute what they are saying. We'll compute it shortly for you.
Then can we give him the death penalty?
I think I'm watching a movie.
Yeah.
Of like a downfall of a country. It's not real, almost. I mean, the audio issues there are just because Sky News obviously had to turn up so quickly
Yeah.
because you tried to organize a Reading Festival level of event
Yeah.
in a few hours. That the internet connection isn't good enough.
I noticed that the crowd's demographics are very.
Watch the body language. Body language says a lot, right? Paralanguage is really important. Paralanguage covers the body of non-verbal communications, the way you breathe, spaces between words, air pressure, not just physical shifting. And even car shifts back. And why are they shifting? Why are they uncomfortable? You might ask yourself. Because they want and expect the ethnos to be able to take their same views, which is why the right are in a cul-de-sac, because the ethnos over there don't agree with you. Now, is this a state-organized plot where they just brought in its actors on the stage? We can talk about that because, you know, my love of the security services means we can speak about those kinds of things, but that's not really what I want to talk about. I want to talk about this dissonance that you're seeing right here. This dissonance is why won't they just, I remember Carl is the man who, we won't forget, it wasn't that many years ago when he said he published his seminal liberalist paper, which I believe was only a couple of pages long before the liberalist project died, went straight to hang him. So obviously liberalism and the liberalists project has gone away and straight to off with his head, but that's not even relevant. What's relevant is the dissonance. The dissonance and the difference is where both the opportunity for the win is and where the truth is.
White British.
And for some reason, they've been had time to print a massive banner that says one city, Nottingham together. That hashtag just came out of nowhere. Right. I've hinted at it enough, I think. We're going to get back to the subject of how organic these responses are to these events on Monday, because I happen to have an article detailing how this seems to have happened a lot in previous events. And we'll go back to that on Monday. So do tune in on Monday when we'll be talking about that. But I'm going to move on, just detail, stay at the English, as I said. We have the other mother who came out at the same event for the other, I believe, university student who was killed. She gave a speech saying, don't have hate in your hearts. The primary concern, again, was state's ideology, not anything else.
My daughter's life was important, but being an anti-racist is more important.
It certainly is.
Incorrect. Notice again, I'm not quite sure if this is just technocratic idiocy or a sincere lack of understanding when you inject the expression, the state ideology. Those people on the street were not acting on behalf of state ideology. I'm going to preempt what young Callum is going to be speaking about, and the same paper and article he's talking about, but we're familiar with this for longer reasons before these guys got a hold of this in terms of maintaining state security and stability. But again, the dissonance. Why is there no hate in their heart? Why aren't they being hateful? Why are the English in the street not being hateful? How can this be? And when we look at the data, it's going to be very, very clear as for if you believe in protecting the English people, if you believe defending English people and English culture against those that will erode it, those that will do it harm, those that will wish to eradicate it, then surely the result is the win that matters. And if winning matters, you can't win by playing blind. You can't win by not looking at the board correctly. And again, the DR literally look at Carl's face. It's a case of suspended disbelief. This is what happens when you go down the ideological rabbit hole, where you're so blinkered that you can't see anything out of your ideological tunnel vision, if you like.
Yes, and this isn't the first time, as we've been over in the past. Manchester held the weirdest response, just odd, to say the least. You may remember the Manchester bombing, where a local man of, I don't know, was local Baz, decided to turn up and bomb a load of children.
Yeah, bomb a concert, so 22 mothers and children died.
And as you can see, the primary response from the authorities...
Could have been prevented, except the guard at the time was like, oh, that looks a bit sus. No, that's racist. That's literally a racist thought in my head.
That was actually why he didn't stop him.
Yeah.
So we have a load of dead children because of anti-racism in that instance.
Yes, 22 people died because a man was afraid of being a racist.
And in this case, the primary response was to sing the song Don't Look Back in Anger. All spontaneously, they decided to just sing.
I said I promised you I'd be a bit contrarian, and this might not have lots of good news when you listen in, but, you know, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do, right? If I were to go to Scripture, and I'm just going to the Gospels here, I could go deeper into the Torah, if you like. But the truth is, you're looking at it the wrong way again. you literally believe that the response must be hate, and hate by itself is sufficient. And the propositional claims you created in a quasi-syllogism there was that if I were to hate and if I were not to be anti-racist and therefore to be racist, the bombing would have been prevented. That's just technically inaccurate, because you flip over and you go to the left-wing channels and listen to them, they're going to double down. They're going to double down on you and go, oh, if you're racist, we're going to double down the other way. They're going to do the equivalent of a sacrifice. They're going to do exactly what you found. And they're also English and they're also white. So there's the little trap, isn't it? Because you don't represent the whole ethnos, what are you going to do? So if you say more racism would have solved the problem, more racism would lead to an amplified anti-racism effort by the same ethnos, by white English people. Get non-whites for a second. White English people would double down against you, causing even more of an arms race, if you like, in racism versus anti-racism. And there's no win there. Ultimately, there's a sort of mimetic exhaustion, of which the whites don't have the numbers. So again, the problem with one-dimensional ideologies and one-dimensional vision, in this case, the one dimension being the axis of race, is not a winning strategy. Sorry, what that means.
Don't look back in anger to a bunch of their children being murdered.
But why should I not? Why should I not be angry if it were my kids who had been murdered?
Well, I mean, this question was asked by...
There are many reasons for this call. There are reasons from faith. There's reasons if you're not a man of faith. I don't believe you are. But if there's the reasons for faith, is because love is one of the highest values spiritually. If you're not a spiritual person, then we know from many studies that hate, envy, and anger are paralytic and deconstructive emotions. Any understanding of psychology will tell you nothing constructive will come out of it. So any understanding of those things say even psychologically, uncontrolled anger, unmanaged anger and hate are not winning emotional stances. So if you say hate is going to win, and I'm not going to take a moral judgment on hate, I'm going to become a moral neutral arbiter, and I'm going to park my religious and spiritual view, which just rejects hate out of hand, and look at it just psychoanalytically, you're wrong. And that's why those people in the street clapped, and that's why you're confused. Now, the name of the game, after all, is to win. Isn't the name of the game to defend England? Isn't the name of the game to defend the English? Isn't the name of the game to defend Blighty? Then what matters more, an ideology that can't win, or doing what's necessary to win?
Piers Morgan, and he was the only person you may remember at the time. I mean, of all the people, Piers Morgan came out on his show and said, no, I think anger is the correct response.
It's appropriate.
To a bunch of children being murdered by a foreign terrorist.
Yes. Totally appropriate.
How did the media take his break of character on a platform that had millions of views?
Piers Morgan might be like, you know, the ultimate stooge of the regime, but even he's like, well, hang on a second.
But you can see it was one small crack in the entire narrative, and immediately, as you can see, the Huffington Post reporting here, Manchester bombing, Coronation Street stars, Sally whatever and Corrie whoever, shut down Piers Morgan's response to the attack. What? Sorry, who agrees with these two random people from Coronation Street?
I think you
did the polling.
I think you find the majority of people. I think you find Coronation Street is one of the most popular programs across time, and stars for soap operas are very popular. They're part of the cultural fabric. So you find that they represent the vast majority, which is why, again, the right are not polling large numbers. What's happening is the increased polarization, the echo chamber, has meant the more you listen to people telling the same views. This is why I spend my time, maybe 60-40, in contrarian positions in the left, just to see what the left responds to the right. I use my left IDs and invert my positions, and then I trick control them like I would do to the right, just to test it. And what's happening is both sides have increasingly doubled down. So no, the majority of people say if a black person, in this case, ran a truck as a heinous act into 3 white people, they're not going to go around. The majority of English white people are not going to go around and start hanging black people. If you think the natural response is to go hang black people because the guy did it was black, you don't speak to the English people anymore, unfortunately. You might want to think you do, but you don't. And how do we know this? All we have to do is ask the English people what they think, and they don't agree with you. Is it right to be angry Is it right to feel grievance and you might call it hate? Is it right to feel a better word? Is it right to feel pain for a tragedy? No, absolutely. Is it right to feel bursts of anger and frustration? Absolutely. Is it right to build your ideology on it? If you think you can win, why not? But it doesn't look like you're going to win anything that way.
What would be the response? Oh, there wasn't any polling done because
You don't want the public opinion on this because it's not going to go their way. But even then, like,
how dare you suggest that we should do something?
Oh, I've got the public opinion data waiting for as soon as this clip is over. No, incorrect. You'll find the public opinion data will not agree with you.
To change what's happening.
Which again is a testament to the English people. You would actually argue that it's one of the strengths of the English people, having given the world human rights, democracy, liberated women, abolished slavery, given the world the Enlightenment, freedom, capitalism. Then no, these are strong English virtues. And those very same English people, because you won't leave your echo chamber, are not going to allow you to throw the baby out with the bathwater. That doesn't mean they also don't share the disgust and the horror and the anger and the rage of 3 innocents having lost their life to a crazy maniac. But they're not going to give up their virtues for a vice.
Instead of repeating the cycle again and again and expecting something to change.
But why? Like, it has the aspect of sort of being pro-bombing.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, if you had said this about the IRA, everyone would have been like, "Are you an?"
The 2 people I was hoping to see was Marsai C3 and the Mossad Shalom Mossad, my friend. You're just in time.
IRA sympathizer?
Yeah. I mean, if you'd say this about Russia now.
Don't look back in anger to the IRA.
Russia's just taken a city in Ukraine. Well, don't look back in anger.
Look, Novichok was.
Well, that's the thing.
I mean, they don't do it for anything else.
Exactly. You would never do it for anything else because you'd be called a sympathizer and you'd be saying you want more of it to happen.
London Bridge. This happened again. This is 2019. Yeah.
Yeah.
The brilliant and handsome 25-year-old, the victim in this case, Jack Merritt, he ran a law course inside a jailhouse as part of his work with a program that.
Now, the reason I brought this up, and we're going to briefly look at the Iranian agent, but before we do so, we're going to look at the highest value and ideal. And you're going to see another. I was half a mile. I lived a mile away from that. I was half a mile with the missus when that attack happened on London Bridge, because we were heading to Bermondsey Market, which is where she picks up her little delicious when that attack happened. Again, notice you're going to see the same dissonance pattern. And this is not meant to be, I'm not trying to be cruel here. I'm trying to be constructive. But again, the absolute dissonance when they look at the response of the father, the one who's lost his son. Listen.
Helped ex-cons rebuild their lives. Oh, how wonderful. And one of those ex-cons, Usman Khan, 28, stabbed Merritt to death on Friday, authorities said.
Yeah. They were having Merritt was trying to help him or something, and he was
the poster boy with Usman being like, yeah, we're going to get you out of prison, you're reformed. And then Usman came out and just stabbed him to death, a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
The father, in this case, again, his primary concern in the speech that was presented was not for the funeral, for how to stop this happening again, blah, blah, blah. Instead, his response was weird. Next link here. He came out and gave a kind of hostage statement. His father, David, who said his son would not wish his death to be used as a pretext for more draconian sentencing or for detaining people unnecessary. He said this after Boris Johnson said that the system of automatic release from prison was flawed.
Duh.
So Boris Johnson sees your son get murdered and says, we should stop that. And your response as a father is, well, don't you undermine the work my son did?
Correct.
You'd still have I'm sorry to be...
And again, the cognitive dissonance, and this is what I say when, a few years ago when I kept harping on from the religious point of view, when you look at the ultimate telos of the right in the traditional canon of the right, all the way to National Socialist canon, it's all the way through Heidegger, through Nietzsche, if you like, even to Eberle. If you claim it's blood and soil and spirit stacked that way, when you lose your spirit, God, you will lose your blood, your ethnos, and your land, your soil. You are emitting non-spiritually coherent messages. You're no longer emitting blood and soil and spirit in your responses. You're emitting tribal messages. And somehow you expect those tribal messages to resonate with the English, but in both cases, that man who emitted that message was emitting a message that was fundamentally Christian. You might not see it because you may not be a Christian, but any person of faith can see what he was doing. Who's in the chat? My brother John McDermott, others will see instantly that the response was not the response of what you expect. And they're like, why didn't he want to just off with his head? Why did he want to honor his son's work of bettering the life of the weakest? Why did he not want to honor his sons who went to Cambridge and spent his life dedicated to helping prisoners, the weakest of the weak, the lowest? Why? Because it's Christian. And if you were Christian, you would understand that, but you're clearly not. So you revert, you fall back down. And therefore, again, you don't represent the English ethnos. And hence, the white are in a cul-de-sac.
But you,
I don't know what to say.
you wouldn't have a dead person in the family.
It's very Yuri Bezmenov, isn't it? Where he says that, even when they're presented with the direct evidence, they can't believe it.
Yeah, and this is what, I mean, we'll get into the orchestrated aspects on Monday, as I said. But usually when there's an attack or something, the person doesn't become a political actor. They stay out of it. The death isn't politicized. We have a conversation
It's
about
a family tragedy.
terrorism, right? But the individuals involved don't. For some reason, in these series of attacks I've just mentioned, the family come out and start acting like political actors, talking about the state's message or state actions.
I essentially have to.
Oh, irony, what do I call thee? Here you are doing the very same thing. You don't care for these people. You don't know them. Did you write them a letter? Did you send them a card of condolences? You're using their death for political purpose. Yet the person who lost his son or lost his family or lost his member, you're saying they shouldn't be political. But was it Aristotle or Plato? Correct me if I'm wrong. Two quotes from the Greeks, because if you reject scripture and fall back to some Hellenistic worldview, then two quotes, a man not interested in politics is destined to be governed by one who does. And was it, correct me in the chat, was it Jamie? Was it Plato or Aristotle? Said a man is not complete until his fifth self, the political, enshrines him. So why would they not be political when you can be? Irony.
Come out and endorse multiculturalism.
Yeah, why? Exactly. And that politicizes the event. And it's like, okay. We go to the next one. David since has become a political actor, it seems. He gave a statement as well, saying that following last Friday's attacks, the Conservatives have pledged to toughen up prison sentences. Merritt believes this would have angered his son, who had devotion and energy for the purpose of prisoner rehabilitation, which is what got him killed.
Why don't we ask it? Oh, we can't, yeah.
Like, literally, the guy who was killed him.
They literally, when presented with the concrete...
So again, who am I to educate you on the fact that there would have been no English civilization, there'd be no British civilization, there'd be no great European, dare say, white civilization, if it hadn't been for a Judeo-Christian civilization. And need I remind you, I know you like the history of the Iranians and the Persians and Sargons of Akkad, but how about the history of your own culture of faith? What happened to the first 100, 200 founding fathers of the church? They went voluntarily to their death by the most painful crucifixions. They martyred themselves for what they believed was true and right. So when you say, oh, but the guy I was working for to benefit what was a better, higher good killed me, you could see that as an act of martyrdom. No spirit, blood and soil is going bye-bye. So when you remain in spiritual dissonance, it's because, again, the message here is blood and soil and spirit. When you lose your spirit, you degrade and downgrade to tribalism. Thank God that Englishman who went to his death went to a Christian death, a European death, a white death, a noble death. Difficult to grasp.
The evidence. There's no graphene on the roof, Callum. They can't. They literally can't. The guy can literally murder the son, and the father's like, yeah, well, I mean, yeah, but you're a racist. Like, it's like, no.
So he made a statement about this. So as I mentioned, David has become a political actor. He has his own Twitter account where he does political activism.
It's tragic.
I mean, you can guess the profile. I'm not going to be rude, but you
Yeah,
can immediately. We'll go to it. We'll go to the next one here because you can see it there. He made this tweet. And this tweet, I'm going to go through the contents of what he's talking about here, but rather the thing that got deleted from him. He tweeted something that was deleted and then was brought back by Twitter once they realized who he was. Let me just look at the profile picture, but we'll get to the statement. So he tweets out, Conservatives, your government released Usman Khan, who killed Jack Merritt and Saskia Jones at London Bridge in 2019, failed to respond to clear warnings about danger from the Reading stabber, failed to prevent the Manchester Arena bombing, all serious crime up on your watch, hang your heads.
I mean, I agree with that. They are right. They shouldn't have released Usman
David
Khan.
is correct.
They shouldn't have just let the Manchester bomber go because they didn't want to be racist.
Well, he's saying that the crime is up. He's not saying what we should do about it.
I'm surprised that Carl, I've got no issues with Carl at all whatsoever. I'm surprised that he made his early career playing with logical syllogisms to debunk purple head feminists and all of that game again. That you make such common, like quite silly logical errors. That's not why. Repeat, no, that's not why. It was nothing to do with racism at all. There's nothing to do with that. If you understand anything about rehabilitation, and you understand that it's either punitive or reformative. Either you're going to lock people up and throw away the key forever, and you just keep having expanding population, or people who are just thrown away because you haven't got the death penalty. You can escalate that death penalty and off with their heads, kill them, cut the hand off of the thief, or what's considered the higher order evolved form is for those that can be reformed, there's a reformative process. Now, it's very easy, right? Smith's quote, it's so easy to love. It's so easy to hate, but it takes guts to be gentle and kind. Easy to love, easy to hate, guts to be gentle and kind, said Morrissey. Easy to say off with his head, chop him off. Much harder to evolve, to be able to reform him. So really, again, not exactly aiming metaphysically terribly high here. And again, my point here is far detached from the great English virtues that were spread across the world. The great English virtues that gave the world, for example, women's rights. Those very same virtues disconnected. The dissonant right is a far more accurate label.
Yeah.
David is correct that the crime is up. What should we do about it? I'll just go through the examples David gave. Because, I don't know, the English seem to have a particular
timeline
problem.
is full of right-wing arseholes. Oh, I wonder why, David.
So we'll go to the next one here. We have the Reading stabber. Just quick fact check. He was a jihadist Libyan asylum seeker.
Yeah. Stabbed 3 gay men, wasn't it?
He said he was fleeing post-traumatic stress that he had from the civil war in Libya and came to the United Kingdom from Libya in 2017 to escape the violence.
So he stabbed 3 gay men.
The violence in question was the violence he was committing for Ansar al-Sharia, who are allied to Al-Qaeda.
Of course.
So he was out there killing people for a group allied with Al-Qaeda.
And here's where we do agree. I don't want mass migration. I don't want a lot of people running around Germany, where I am right now, or England, or any other country I care about, the United States, who are culturally, spiritually, morally incompatible. So what matters? Do you want to play to win? Do you want to stop the Great Replacement? Do you want to stop crazy Libyans with some jihadi death cult revenge thing on their mind, running around stabbing innocent people in Reading? Do you want that outcome? Or do you want to just pay lip service to a post-facto world in which somehow you got this thing? What matters more, the win or a right-wing postmodern virtue signal? Says, oh, if I had my way, I would just behead him in the tower. But you won't get your way. Because you can't get your way that way, because people won't agree with you.
And then, so this is too violent. UK, please save me. Came to the UK and then was convicted 6 times for 15 crimes between 2015 and 2019, of which 8 were violent.
We're happy to talk about the win. That's what we're working on, Stevie Maman. But this, that's a very different stream. Huh.
2 involved the possession of a knife, and 2 for racially or religiously aggravated harassment.
Yeah.
And at no point did our government think we should deport him.
There's the kid that was stabbed in the neck in the street the other day. Do you remember?
Which one?
Well, yeah. And he just, again, another asylum seeker, just with a knife. And he stabbed this kid because he wanted to get deported.
Well, that's the way to do it.
No, it's not. They're not going to get deported.
No,
That's the
it's
thing. They're
just stay
not
here
going to
forever.
get deported.
Yeah. So I mean, he
But, like-
stabbed 3 gay men in Reading. The gay part always seems to have been forgotten in Reading. I happen to be
just,
there for
I
it,
just can't
so-
stand it. It's like, look, if we had the death
Affectionate.
penalty, none of these things would be a problem because they'd be like, well, if I did anything, if I stab someone, I'm not getting deported. I'm getting hanged,
Hmm.
as it should be.
But I always want to bring up the gay thing because I'm annoyed in this particular instance that this not only got swept under the rug, but that particular aspect, no one who talks about it ever mentions it. Locally, everyone talks about it still.
I bet they do.
Get on the Oxford Road, those guys don't, but off the sides, they do for some reason. Anyway, go to the Manchester bomber, the other one David mentioned. Well, we've been over this. Libyan refugee, family of Islamists who were fleeing justice by Gaddafi.
Yep.
That would be death for terrorism. The bomber was born in the UK, but for some reason, I don't think a person who bombs children for the glory of Allah is very British just because they're born in the UK.
No.
So I don't believe he's a horse either. Threatened a school teacher whilst he was here with accusations of Islamophobia because the school teacher asked him if he thought suicide bombers, what he thought about them, and he responded that they were okay.
Right, okay.
So
And I mean, I don't know how to stress this point without creating a Ralphie-style PowerPoint presentation where I walk into an animated model. But that sentence right there, it's the 7th or 8th time you repeated the same statement and you still don't see it. If the majority of the people hold a value proposition that is culturally prevalent, like don't hang a black person, don't beat your wife, don't torture a child. And you see someone who comes, forget the fact that he might be an outsider. Let's pretend he was even an insider, an outsider. And you make the claim that the way to get them is to make the proposal, let's hang him or off with his head. Then you can't win. You can't stop that way because you're flying blind. The majority of the English people are not going to surrender their virtues that they fought for centuries to evolve because you want to short circuit the process. Do I want to see jihadis running around blowing people? No. You know very well that my personal views would be very, very, shall we say, stern about what should be done with such people. I lived in California during 3 strikes. In no time, all the nasties running around LA, San Francisco were just gone because California just made perfunctory, mandatory 3 strikes, no negotiation in the court, you're going to prison. Absolutely, that would be minimal penal, but you're not going to take the people with you. If you make claims that are anti the virtues of the very same culture you claim to defend. There's no hanging. The majority of English people don't want to hang anybody. Do they want a jihadi running around blowing up little English girls or grooming? Not at all. Do they want strict punitive measures? Absolutely. But here's where the right runs into a cul-de-sac, because they won't separate the good ones from the bad ones. And they'll just say black person, brown person, Muslim, what have you, pick a label. You immediately lose the majority of the people. So which is it? What do you want, the win or right-wing postmodern virtue signaling? Because you yourself won't do anything. Neither Callum nor Carl in that situation personally would have done anything. They would have probably tweeted about it.
because the teacher had asked him and he'd responded that suicide bombing was okay, he reported the teacher for Islamophobia.
Good point.
That incident doesn't make the school call up Prevent and go, we should deport this guy.
Yeah,
But he's a lunatic.
This guy's pro-suicide bombing.
Also, his family.
God, I love you, Timmy. Timmy doesn't waste time. To the point. Power is what changes things. And you're not going to get power when everything you say goes against everything the people you claim to speak for agree. When is that going to settle in your head? So let's look at Elon Musk and Twitter. I think I saw the data, 18,000% more people going N-word, 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 kai, kai, kai on Twitter. The majority of people don't want to see that or hear that. When you say more freedom of speech, gas the Jews, hang up the black people, you no longer speak for the English. You no longer speak for European or white people. You know, someone got upset with me the other day and I said, based is such a stale word. Based is so over. Two things have happened with the word based. And there's only two choices. Either you have become debased, N-word, 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 kite-word, or you will be rebased. Which is it? Have you become debased? Are you now a conservative? Do you hold the values of sanctity and purity of hierarchy and fundamental conservative principles because you can run on Twitter going, black person, Jew, Jew, Jew. Are you based? No, not at all. You're debased. So which way? Debased is not going to win. English virtues will not be sacrificed for it. Wake up. Smell the coffee, as the Ag say.
Have you ever checked out what they're doing these days? Well, at that time, they were fighting with the Islamic Fighting Group, another Islamist terrorist group. Terrorists in the UK, in case you're wondering, literally illegal to even have moral support for them, but they were allowed to stay here, that family, and then their brothers went on to kill a bunch of kids. No need for deportation. Yeah. We'll get the next one here, because, 600 every day at this point. Just more asylum seekers turn up illegally. Just criminals off the bat.
Yeah.
But trust me, everything will go well. And obviously, I want to mention this is massively unlike.
No, trust me. You don't do your homework. I watch left-wing channels watching you guys. I listen to the large left-wing channels commenting on right-wing channels. Just like right-wing channels go into their echo chambers and forget about the left, left-wing channels do that too. And this obviously across the homophily type of reviews, which are the ones that interest me the most. Or they're going to make sure you're not going to stop the boat people. You're like, what? Surely we must stop the boat people. They're going to know. We're going to make sure you don't stop the boat people and send them to Rwanda. And when you see why, they say because you're being racist to everyone who's black and brown. You're like, but it's just the boat people we want to stop. Well, in that case, you should be calling out the racists and differentiating them. But you're like, no, actually, it's all blacks and all browns and get the boat people. Majority of English people are going to fight you. They're going to take you to court. They're going to make sure none of those people leave. So again, what's the win? It can't be get the boat people in a vacuum because you just don't have the numbers to win. So the name of the game is to win. What matters more? You have to get the British people to be with you. You must have the populist support of the people, which means you can't just be all black people are muggers, all brown Muslims are terrorists, because you lose the majority of British people. So again, you're not speaking for the ethnos, you're speaking at the ethnos.
Say Ji-Yun Park, who we've interviewed and spoken about before, a North Korean refugee who, might have been fleeing something. And also, no threat to the public, for some reason. It's almost like we didn't used to have this problem when we used to let in refugees and asylum seekers. Only in recent years, and I mean since 1997 something happened, refugee terrorism became a thing. In fact, we've done this before. The estimate I got from just going through it was around about 40% all terrorism in the UK.
Sorry, chaps, I have to take a call, so I'm just going to let this one. Hopefully no ads. Oh, people who doesn't have any ads, he's demonetized. Still want to talk about the Jews, Carl?
Okay, is now caused by asylum seekers, despite making up 0.1% of the population.
Not even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. I wish you get the next link here because there's a Sudanese refugee as well who raped in Exeter University. This particular case is interesting because the Home Office knew he was being charged with rape and suspected of being a rapist whilst they were taking the application and still approved him. They didn't want to find out if he was an actual rapist first.
Do they want him to rape again? I mean, what is he going to take from that? So I raped someone, I flee. It's like there was one in Austria, murdered a kid in Austria, and we took him in. He murders again. It's like, okay, but it's like we must be telling them we're in favor of the crimes you commit.
We'll get the next one here because I think for a moment, and maybe this is too much on my part, maybe I'm evil for saying so, but I thought we'd take a look at the other option that's apparently on the table that we always get told.
Yeah.
So there's one option, which is we just praise the ideology, and then this happens again, and we praise the ideology.
Yeah.
And the other option we get told from the establishment is a far right will take over.
Oh, yeah.
And then what? It'll be worse.
Fewer terror attacks? That'd be awful.
It'll be way worse, trust me.
Yeah.
Nigel Farage might get a knighthood.
Nigel Farage might deport some terrorists.
So let's check out our local chap. Let's take him as the avatar of evil.
Average far rightist.
Millwall fan hailed as Lion of London Bridge after terror attack, probed by Met Police after racist rant. So there we are.
You may have saved some lives, my friend, but you said something racist.
So, I mean, the alternative we're being said is the anti-terrorism far right would take over, and what would they do? Well, we have it personified in Roy over here. Beautiful name.
South FC.
What did he say? He said, the man dubbed the Lion of London Bridge after he took on terrorists shouting, F you, I'm Millwall, during the terror attack, is under police investigation after going on a racist rant.
Of course he is. It's just, of course he is.
The 47-year-old hero, they put hero in quotations,
Yeah.
as if he's lost his status now. Ugh.
Oh, yeah,
Not
yeah,
anymore.
yeah. Well, he was a hero, but then he was like,
He was stabbed 8 times in the Black
Jesus.
and Blue Steak restaurant in Borough Market as he protected other customers and waiting staff from 3
Jesus.
terrorists with knives.
but don't you dare make a generalization about these people.
I mean, do you remember when that happened? Do you remember the video clip from one of the restaurants?
Not offhand.
There was a video clip from the specific attack, because we have to make even with London Bridge, there's so many, in which the people barricade the doors, hide down, and someone pipes up who's a bit drunk and goes, "Oh, the Muslims," and then everyone goes, "Oh, shut up!
Oh, yeah.
It's not the Muslims."
Yeah.
If they were
Yeah,
Muslims.
I do remember that.
Just for some reason, turns out they were. Roy, with 2 dogs in tow, approached a group chanting.
It's just a coincidence, right? I mean, it's just darts in the board.
Yeah.
He happened to get it right this time.
So, the racist rant, he was he approached a group.
Again, the problem with the group analysis is, first of all, you're not playing the data on the board whatsoever. 99% of Muslims in the country don't do any such thing. Muslim population, unless you win, unless the right win, is going to head to about 25 to 30% possibly at its peak form in the United Kingdom. Most of them are conservative, most of them have more than 2 children. Or demographic projection, so the Muslim population is rising. If you want that not to be the case, if you want to control that, you want to protect English culture. I can't say Christian to you guys, clearly, but if you want to protect the post-Christian culture, you want to protect English or British culture, God forbid I use words like European or white culture, then to go after Muslims means the large swathes of the English people are going to say Islamophobic. If, on the other hand, you say some Muslims don't work out here, ones who go around stabbing people, etc., shouldn't be here, but that other Muslim guy, the guy who's a doctor, he's okay. But you can't say that because you're ideologically blinkered, and therefore, even if you want to do something about the good Muslim, you won't be able to do anything about the good Muslim or the bad Muslim. One-dimensional thinking.
Saying Trump and May have got to go. The group there were chanting that in Elephant Castle in South London in February. The dad of one can be seen screaming, "Ban the foreigners, you C-word," before spitting at the Black Movement for Justice campaigner, so BLM people who were photographing the demonstration.
Right.
He then shouts, "Shut up, you C-word. F off, you
No, my good friend, the Mossad, I refuse to be understood. I'm not interested in fame. And I have a very expensive mic that's just behind me, and I refuse to plug it in. Sorry, matey, not going to happen.
spastic pedophile C-word. W-word, I'll smash the life out of
Okay,
you.
yeah.
People like you smell like S.
I think we get the impression.
I don't think, no, we got to do more. Because
No.
I really want to get the point across that, yeah, he's not some kind of like.
No, but you see this sort of almost puerile giggling, this puerile glee, this sort of laughing. Oh, look, they abused the Jewish person. They abused the black person. Oh, look, hee, mommy, I'm so based. You're actually debased. Mommy, look how based. Mommy, did you wash my base t-shirt? It's exactly why the virtuous English, I'm not going to give you an inch. That's why the state, the institutions, the social structures are going to penalize you because you're not playing the board. And when that puerile sort of telegram culture comes out going, warm up the ovens, get the Jews are running the world, get the black people, all black people are mockers, is why you can't win. Because the majority of English people look at you and they have no connection whatsoever with that. The puerile giggling, the sort of like literally the little glee, like you're 12 or something, Calvin. Ha ha ha, look, mommy, look, I made a funny about black people. Is exactly why the majority of English people will not even give you the time of day. And that's why you can't have a job in a normal place, because the normal English people go, well, we don't like that, don't want to hear it. But suppose you still want to win. Suppose you still really care about England, and you care about English culture and English people, and you think that what's being done to the English is wrong. what's been done to European people is wrong, then what matters more to you? Winning or going, "Mummy, mummy, I did a funny about an oven joke. Mummy, mummy, look, I'm so clever." Wassalamu alaikum, Banksy. "Mummy, mummy, look how funny I am. Mummy, I made a funny about Jewish people. Mummy, why can't I get a job and a career anymore? Mummy, I'm so funny."
Perfect hero.
Yeah.
Motherless C word from C word, F word off, keep moving, F word off, you foreign C word, F you off, C words, your mum, F your mum.
Okay.
It goes on.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. There's no information about why he approached them or.
And this is what I mean by the words debased. Literally, should I play Pixies for you guys right now? Because if you look at moral foundations for the right, what are the three moral foundations that differentiate conservatives from the left? One is authority, hierarchy. The other is in-group preference, my tribe, my English. But what is the third? Purity and sanctity. Acting in a degenerate fashion just disqualifies you from being called conservative. I understand that Carl was very upset when Peter Hitchens insinuated that he was not really classy enough because he was being tacky. And Peter Hitchens is right, because Peter Hitchens is conservative. And he says conservatives don't do things like that. They don't lower purity and sanctity as a dimension. Religious people don't do that. Very pious religious people wouldn't do that. And here you're going up, C word, funny, I'm so based. No, you're debased. You are degenerate. You're literally decrying conservative moral foundations. Because what? Because you're 12? What is it? Can't you see that? Normal English people, middle class, lower class, educated, uneducated, will look at you and go, that's quite distasteful. And therefore you can't take the populace with you.
What they might have done to him. Presumably because they're BLM supporters, they were engaging in peaceful protest. I mean, we just have to take that as the assumption. So there we are. We have Roy as our avatar of the alternative. And yes, clearly the future would be absolutely worse off because racism is worse than murder. I genuinely believe that. That is my wholehearted position. Isn't it yours, Carl?
Well, I mean, I believe everything the British government says.
It's amazing. But then finishing off to check in on the British, just real quick, we'll check out how are they doing as existing. We've been over this. 0.0% in places in London.
So before we jump off that one, the point there I was trying to make was, well, what would a more evolved response be? What would something far more evolved be to Nottingham? What would if you were to try to raise the bar and take Nottingham as an example, and it was your loved ones? Remember, this is postmodern reflective virtue signaling of the right. We really care about the Nottingham people, but you don't really care about the Nottingham people. What you care about is a black man. Who are you kidding? No one believes that you care about those people as much as you cared about. It was a black guy did, because if it was a white guy did, you'd be like, oh, whatever, average crime statistic, nothing to see here. But so you didn't really care. It wasn't your own. It wasn't your flesh and blood. It wasn't the thing closest to you. It was a political proxy for an ideological position. It's not rooted in a spiritual position. It's not rooted in a true meta-ethical position if you don't believe in God. So what would the highest challenge be? Like, here's a challenge to go, like I said, no personal animosity to Lotus Munchers. I have no issues with Carl or not Frodo, what's his name, Callum? I have no issues with Carl. I mean, I don't know the people, but we never speak to them in my life. But what would, if I had to throw down a challenge, what would be the higher order virtue? If you were to be an ambassador for England, you'd be an ambassador for English values and English virtues. If you were to go to the world stage and say, no, this is the highest ideal of being English, what would that mean in the Nottingham analogy? What if it was your children that were killed? What if it was your mother and father that was killed? What would you do? I mean, you want to hang the black man you don't even know for someone you don't really care about. But what would it be with someone actually your flesh and blood? What would that be like? Well, good news and bad news. probably, I think, the most important speech I've heard in a long time. And I think this is exactly what the answer is. Listen to what you should say and do.
Speaking for myself, I shed tears during your eulogy at the funerals. The entire nation of Israel, I think, did. We've seen much tragedy in this country, including this year, but your family's tragedy impacted people so deeply. Why do you think that is?
It's a very good question. I don't really know what struck the chord, but I think that in the Torah there's a concept that, you know, 1 is an individual, 2 is the minimum of plural of a group, and 3 represents almost a nation. So I think when some tragedy like this happens to 3 people, it affects the whole nation. It's symbolic of the nation as a whole.
I saw the people of Efrat were standing in the square.
I will, for reasons of absolute respect and admiration, be silent for almost all of this. 1, a person; 2, a group; 3, a nation. From the Torah, a man who lost his wife and both his daughters. Listen, Lotus lads. This is what happens when you don't lose your faith.
They embraced your family. The Shiva is now past. Are they still embracing your family?
It's incredible. I mean, the response from my neighbors and my friends has just been unbelievable. We have thousands of people come through the Shiva. When we drove from the house to the cemetery, we had to drive through about 4 or 5 kilometers of Efrat, which is very long and thin. And we had thousands of people on the streets with waving Israeli flags. It was very emotional for all of us to see that, just a huge turnout. And it was a turnout that King Charles would be proud of at his coronation. I don't think he'd have such a turnout. The love that they've shown us has sort of reflected back. And there are so many projects going on around the world now in memory of Lucy and Maya and Rena that are affecting so many people's lives. That's like a cycle of love.
I think part of it, though, is because of Rabbi D's positivity. The message that you're sending is striking a responsive chord among so many people, don't you think?
I think that I've tried to understand why I responded this way. And I think it's because, you know, human beings can be looked at from 2 perspectives, the physical and the spiritual. And from a physical perspective, we've lost 3 beautiful ladies, my wife, who I loved for 25 years, 2 daughters. And if I think about the loss, it's devastating. However, from a spiritual perspective, I look at it in a slightly different light. I say that 15 years ago, Rena's light was lit. 20 years ago, Maya's light was lit. And 48 years ago, Lucy's light was lit. And those candles have lit other candles, and those candles that they've lit have lit other candles. And there's been a spreading of light through their lives. And at moments like this, when the whole world embraces you, and people are telling you stories about, you know, how your wife impacted somebody who impacted somebody, and it comes back to you, and you realize that the impact that they had in their very short lives was so great, that fills me with great comfort, and makes me feel that, you know, these short lives were really, from a spiritual perspective, very, very long lives. I think that we should be very proud of what we have here. I think that we, first of all, have shown through this period how we are one people, because people have come together from all walks of life. I mean, the religious and the non-religious, the left and the right, Jews are from outside of Israel, Jews within Israel. We're one people, and I think we've shown that connection at this point. So we are stronger than ever. And as far as Israel as a country is concerned, as you know, it's booming economically and in so many different areas, and morally as well. It's building irrigation around Africa. It's the best country at preserving water in the world, and it's teaching that technology to so many other countries.
You and your country made this country your home. You're still recommending it as a place for your friends and Jews from the diaspora?
There's only one place to live as a Jew, and it is in Israel. And if Lucy were able to sort of shout out from heaven, she would say, absolutely right. I wouldn't have it any other way. Karen, Talia, and you would have to stay here. They have to build their homes here. They have to have their children here. And they have to build up this country to make it even stronger. And my message to some of the American rabbis that came, who are tremendous rabbis who inspired me through my whole life, was now is the time for you to come and to bring your communities and to settle in Israel. Because there's never been a better time. I'm a terrible advert for that, obviously, from what's happened to me. But as I said on CNN the other night, statistically, the amount of terror in this country is less than the amount of stabbings on the streets of London. And unfortunately, the statistics didn't help me. But if you look beyond, my particular situation, it's the safest country to live. We love the fact that kids can come back at night here 2, 3 in the morning. We're not worried about who they're mixing with. We're not worried about who would be in the streets at that time of night. They're extremely safe, and it's a wonderful place to bring up kids.
Rabbi, stay positive and be blessed.
Thank you.
Now, I know I've said a lot of controversial things, and I have a feeling people are going to want to, before I play the next bit, I'm going to open up the panel because I have a feeling Master IC3 and others are here, and incoming hostile. What did Rabbi D, who just lost his wife and 2 daughters, did we see the message of hate or anger? Did you see a message of a propagation of something far more evolved as a virtue? I remember this is a man living in Israel. I mean, just yesterday, 4 people gunned down just while eating in a cafe. A constant war between the Palestinians and or the Arabs. But what did he say? Was there hate? Was there something that was a more evolved virtue? Master IC3.
Greetings.
Oh, see, I was so hoping you'd show up. you seem to have taken some issue with the comment of English virtues versus advice.
Yeah, I think that's the core of this whole presentation. Really, what you're saying is that, if I understand you correctly, that the impression I got is that you've got to maintain the moral high ground or virtuousness or righteousness of yourself and the society at all costs, no matter what happens. So if the children die or if half your family is killed off, a bit like Job kind of situation, that if you lose that, then you lose yourself and you lose the society and you lose the right to exist.
Indeed,
that's the impression I got.
And indeed, and also just to have a good piece of data, when these chaps don't understand the dissident right, this is the largest poll, and I'll let you guys just chat and say, the largest poll of race and ethnicity in Britain. When I say Britain is tolerant, quick slap. This data goes back almost 15 years. In the last 15 years, how much tension do you believe Britain has with people of different races? Improving that way, quickly. How is racial tolerance going in Britain for 10 years? More tolerant. How are different races in treatment by Britain's public service? Much better. Would you see Stephen Lawrence happening again? No, it wouldn't be permitted. Would you be happy for a child to marry someone from another ethnic group? Soaring from 34 to 70%. And the window is already made. Would you see a non-white prime minister? Already done. So the board is telling you that the virtues of the English people are fundamentally not aligned with the clapping seals of the dissident right, but yet we must still want to defend the English. I still don't want to defend England and the English. So if you want to win, you can't win against the virtues of the English. So the virtues on, hello Jordan, hello Tom. May I go for a quick to the little boys' room? And be right back.
Yes. So Kingston, the Empire, the man of the Empire.
That was my mic sound.
Good.
Yeah, sounds good.
Sounds
yeah.
Awesome. Hi, IC3. Hi, Tiger. Hi, Jay.
How you doing? Oh. Yeah. So,
I will say that poll. I think what the reason why we're becoming more tolerant is because there's less English people. So.
Yeah. There you go. So therefore, Englishness. You see that? So therefore, Englishness is synonymous with righteousness and virtue. Correct?
Amen to that.
Well,
I mean, there's a spirit about the Englishness. You know, there's how you say it, politeness. Like to live.
Stiff upper lip.
Yep.
Yeah.
Love to They love gardens as well. That's quite unique. You know, most people don't like the time to do all that gardening stuff. In fact, I'm going to have to water my garden pretty soon. Had good sunlight.
All right. Okay.
And there's also other things. Just being polite. Well, I mentioned that. Taking part in queues. You know, moaning about the weather. Yeah. Lots of stereotypical behaviour associated with the English.
Okay,
Unless you cold
here's the
call them,
question.
Jay.
Go on then,
Unless
go
you
on.
cold call them, if you cold call them, you see the real grotty, gritty, angry. Why are you calling me? Why have you got my number?
Oh yeah. We're also extremely stubborn as well.
Okay.
We're the best.
Which
We
is
are the
good
best
then,
at
isn't it?
that.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
like,
but here's the rub.
For example, like
Go on then.
during the later later bits of the First World War, the Germans were doing their like final offensive. It was like literally called, I think it was like they were called stormtroopers, and they actually managed to make some significant gains. And they were so close to winning, but the English were just so stubborn that they managed to hold the lines, and then the German momentum like fizzled out. So yeah, there's this English stubbornness that, you know, can really be beneficial at the right time.
I still love that video, Jay, of do you remember the Christmas video, the Christmas advertisement where they stop shooting each other, they both hold up the white flags and they start playing football?
Oh yeah.
It's brilliant. That is brilliant. It's a shame. It's a shame the way the world has gone. Hi, Tiger. Lovely to meet you. Been wanting to chat to you for ages, but never got the chance. So lovely to meet you.
Yeah, we're living in interesting times, especially with the emergence of AI and all the wonders it can do. I mean, right now it's obviously
you just woke the beast. You just woke the beast. AI is on it.
Well, it's a shame. Like so far, all the AIs like ChatGPT and the other ones have been programmed not to be racist or sexist. But
no, that's not true.
Well, haven't they been lobotomized? Like, if you ask ChatGPT about race realism or all that stuff, then it says, "Oh, I'm not allowed to speak about those things." So
no, not allowed. What it's doing is that's not how it works for large language models. It's just taking the body of knowledge that's public, and the body of knowledge that's published is saying that.
Oh, interesting.
So if I gave it a body of knowledge, for example, so we're about to do one of the largest pieces of AI work on what I believe is the largest UK political model we have. And it's only going to know what it can know from what's given.
Right.
Is Tiger coming in again? Oh, that's Tiger trying to come. So that's not technically true. But the racism, back to race, you can see the problem right there, right? So if you look at the racism in the UK, it's fascinating. If you look at the four racial groups and look at racism from within, white racism, typically on the far right, is anti-anything not white. It's very symmetrical to black racism, where black racism is anti-white predominantly, because as it grievances, IC3 can confirm, against white people. But brown racism and yellow racism is much stronger, but it's silent.
There's only one racism.
Brown racism and yellow racism is very different from black racism and white racism. Brown racism and yellow racism is silent and inward. Black racism and white racism is external and complex. So Indians and Chinese are very racist, but you won't see any projection outwards of their racism.
They're discriminatory. Discriminatory.
Correct. It's like an in-group bias and preference that's silent. Right.
Do you think that's because of like the historical evolution of like Indian racism? The fact that has a lot more to do with, the Western steppe tribes migrating into South Asia, and the fact that lighter skinned people just tend to be of a higher caste.
The caste system.
Would you say it's a different kind?
No, I
racist.
would say, Tiger, what the single biggest thing is, if I had to pick one factor that differentiates white racism, black racism from, say, Indian and Chinese racism, is cultural insecurity. Indians and Chinese are very culturally secure, and they don't proselytize their culture.
So I'd have to disagree there, because there's an advert of a woman, and like it's a skin bleaching advert, and she comes in and she's like got dark skin and she looks kind of like Indian-y looking, and she goes like, "Oh no, like you can't," and then she does the skin bleaching thing and dyes her hair blonde. She comes back, and then like the guy goes, "Oh no, foreign passport that way," and then he goes, "Oh no, I am Hindustani." Like I'll post the link, but it's quite
Yeah, I've seen those kind of adverts.
Those are kind of like
some Indians like,
but that's
seem
kind
to
of like
want white.
anecdotal, but that's like anecdotal, almost caricature racism. I'm talking about actual high quality racism that shows up as in-group preference. So, for example, you're not going to see many Chinese people, Indian people at dinner with non-Chinese and non-Indian people.
So having what?
It's a in-group. It's a very strong out-group exclusionary principle that isn't projected outwards. If you run a few experiments, you go to dinner and you watch a lot of Indians and Chinese at dinner, you won't see them with many non-Indians and non-Chinese.
Right.
You won't see Indian Black Lives Matter Chinese, but what you will see is massive in-group preference for jobs, security.
So I'd have to disagree there. I had a friend, she's from a very conservative Indian background, and her sister was very like disturbed by what happened to George Floyd. She was crying about it, and the whole family were pretty disturbed about what happened to him, because they saw the picture of the dude on the knees in their neck. So I think that, there are South Asian people that are on a fan.
I think the lefties are right, Tiger. The lefties might see that, but the majority, and I probably know many more Indian people, probably Chinese people than you, it's a complete detachment, because their culture is in proselytizing. Lord England in the chat says it right. It's a very healthy in-group preference, but it's not trying to go to the street going, "Hey, you be less racist to me."
So respectfully, and I don't mean to be racist towards Indians, and it's not my place to tell someone how to be.
Indians are the most racist people on the planet.
I know, but I mean,
I don't know about that. Sorry, Tiger, 1 second.
Yeah,
sorry, buddy, go.
That's right.
No,
Tell him, Jordan.
What I was saying is that because the skin bleaching ad I saw, it seems like there's a lot of white worship in the South Asian community. Like a lot of them don't want to be light skinned, but almost European, and it's quite scary. It's quite sad.
That's the power of whiteness. Yes, Tiger.
You do see a lot of Bollywood actors, Indian actresses who are very light skinned as well.
Tell him, Tiger.
All right, another thing. Check out these Bollywood movies. If you check, like, they will show Indian women with Indian men, but they'll show Indian men with Indian women, light-skinned Indian women, and white women in their music videos. It's quite crazy. Like,
Tiger, this is so anecdotal. The largest data on racism in the United States in the 1960s, from the Pew Foundation after Kennedy started calculating this data in the 1960s. This is the world racism map.
So Ralph, I agree. He is racist.
Which country just sticks out as being the most racist?
Brazil and India.
No. Look at the map.
Yeah, I know India, obviously. But Ralph, I think.
But is that racism or just in-group preference? The language.
It depends what you want to call it. Is racism in India?
We're looking at the Middle East, aren't we? The Middle East is 40% plus.
Yeah. Arabs are the second most racist people after Indians.
Yeah, Arabs don't even.
But
like
Indians have been. But Ralphie, correct
Arabs.
me if I'm wrong. Haven't Indians been good to Indian Jews? I've never heard that they were.
So indeed, the discrimination is usually cultural civilization. They respect Jews because they're a very old and deep culture. They respect the Chinese for the same reason. They also disrespect Africans for the opposite reason.
Right. Okay.
So they respect cultural civilizational superiority, and the Jews are considered a superior civilization. So the Indians have no problem.
I'd have to disagree. Sorry. Once again, I'm not Indian and I don't know how, everything about your culture. But I believe that the reason why they love Israel so much is because they hate Muslims. And in fact, I believe in India, a bunch of Hindus killed like a Muslim because he was suspected to have frying some steak.
But that's true. But Tiger,
that's crazy.
That's true that Hindus are very anti-Muslim, or not all of them, because of the 800 years of Muslim. But the relationship with Jews goes back 3,000 years.
3,000.
Because
the Jews who migrated into India.
The Jews also don't proselytize.
Sorry, 3,000.
Yeah, so the Jews don't proselytize, right? They don't try to make the Indians Jewish. With Islam proselytizers, right?
Okay, I mean, India didn't even really exist through like the Indus River Valley. There were Jews in the Indus River Valley civilization. Like
The Jews came down.
No, we're talking Pakistan, Tiger. I think you mean Pakistan.
Well, the Jews,
that's like 3,000 years is like
the Jews
end
in
of the Bronze
culture, the Jews in culture and stuff arrived 700-800 years before Christ. Yeah, the Jews came down all the way down to the south of India. So the Jews, the reason the Jews are not two things: in the positive trade because they're considered a civilization worth respecting, and secondly, they don't proselytize. Christians and Muslims proselytize.
It's the first time I'm hearing of this.
That's okay.
So can I ask you a question, then, Ralph?
Yes, sir.
Dealing with this virtue and the video you were showing, I think what you were basically showing is that the English. We'll stay with the English now for the moment.
Yeah.
Because I still think whiteness is an aspect of Englishness, but we'll put that aside just for a moment, and we deal with Englishness and virtue. I think that's the point you're making.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, English people are white. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And virtue, right?
Yeah.
And that they want to maintain the moral high ground at all costs.
Well,
correct?
They don't want to maintain the moral high ground. That's part of their cultural history of England. Remember, the English gave the world liberalism, the Enlightenment, women's rights, emancipation. These are in the English culture.
Right. Okay. Right.
But also,
Moral high ground is kind of like a different statement. That's like can be I'm better than you, right? But that's just in the English culture, right?
Okay. So first of all, let's deal with Englishness, and then we'll go into what is actually an English person, or who can be English. Yeah. So if you're associating Englishness with virtue.
English,
yes,
English
and you're saying that virtue has been built over many battles that they've had over the time. Centuries. Yeah. Okay. So they've developed those values, and that you see those values as universal values.
Only because the empires, they take them out universally as the in quotes white man's burden. Each culture has virtues and vices, right? Every culture has its own virtues and vices, but English virtues are the ones least developed since the 17th century, arguably 16th century.
I see you as an Englishman. You might not class yourself as an Englishman, but you seem to me very English. You're very well spoken. You're very articulate. Not saying that if you're an immigrant, you're not. But you come across extremely English to me.
Okay.
I see.
So similar, what's it called? Noble savage, yeah, the noble savage, civilized man is very English.
Far from savage, far from a savage.
But Jordan is right. ICT exhibits English cultural traits, manners, respect, space. These are English cultural traits, right?
So let's look at this. This is going to get a bit heavy. So watch this. So English virtues sold and expanded as far as the empire went. Okay. Then you said that there's flaws. Every nation has
virtues and vices. Like every person has a
right. So what are the vices? What are the vices? What are the English vices? Tell us the English vices.
In the modern world, I would say individualism. Selfishness.
So the English vices are individualism and selfishness.
Right. So the English are the most individualistic nation probably on the planet. The Brits are just ahead of the Americans. So if you let me contrast, it'd be easy to contrast to another culture. If you went to, let me give you a simple anecdotal example. If you went out for dinner with, say, Indian people, Chinese people, you would never split the bill. It would be considered rude. You went to eat together as a group. You ate as a group of people together. You didn't say, "Oh, yours was $15, yours was $20."
Right.
That would be considered a not a virtue.
Right.
Because with English people, that be I pay my own way. One man's virtue is another man's vice, right?
Right. Yeah, I think that's. Would you agree with that, Kingston?
To a certain extent, yeah, because the Eurasia. Eurasia is more of a shame-based society, so it's very clannish, and we the English and the Anglosphere is more of a guilt type of society. So we feel like
more individualistic.
Well,
What
individualist.
what if history again, haven't you?
Oh, he makes a really good point, and I think obviously it's mostly down to geography and certain environmental factors of why some groups are more ethno-nationalist and others are more individualistic.
Which is why also if you imagine the Achilles heel for something like the Great Replacement or just generally the culture war is very difficult to get. So even if you look at it professionally, for example, if you look at my disciplines, finance, technology, etc., you'll find Israelis, Indians, Russians, even Chinese people collaborate really well with each other. But Americans and English all want to be individualistically prima donnas.
Right. Well, it's a double-edged sword, really. So the positive side of being very individualistic is that you're very open to new ideas, and therefore you have an advantage over those who are very stubborn and don't want to learn new ideas.
Innovation, individual autonomy,
entrepreneurships, and all that stuff. Yeah.
Individualism, individual resilience, but no group traits, for example. The most balanced nations for group traits are like Japan, Israel, India. The most collectivizing are Chinese, some African nations.
Yeah, so this is the thing. We've gone too far to the individualistic side, and we're kind of like committing suicide.
Which just depends what the metric is. I think IC3 was trying to open a line of questioning there, right? IC3 about what are these English virtues, but I think
that's right. Let's explore that, because if there's something being lost, let's find out what is being lost.
IC3, go back to the people in Nottingham, all of them on the street, and what the Lotus Eaters could not understand. They were seeing a mass display of English virtue.
Right.
And what was that English virtue? Justice.
Right.
It would be unjust to collectively punish all black people for one mad black man's act. That's an English virtue of justice. And they couldn't understand it. They couldn't understand why the English people clapped for that woman's speech. But the woman was resonating with an English virtue, which is don't be unjust.
Right.
Remember, modern justice and modern stuff both came from England.
Yeah, but that's the thing. We have a guilt-based society because of, being Christian.
It's a virtue. Why is it a guilt? Why you say
well, when we were Christian, our guilt was based on original sin. But then when we became less Christian, but we still needed a guilt mechanism to fill in the void, then it became white guilt, and we must put the black man on a pedestal because of our collective guilt.
No, Jamie, I don't think that's what we saw in Nottingham. I think what we saw was when she made a speech that Sargon didn't understand is the primary English. What's a simple way to put it? The English like fair play. It would be unfair to punish all black people for one mad black man's act. That's a very English virtue. It's not guilt. It's a virtue.
Yeah, but it was specific.
If you went to Pakistan or Africa, they would have killed his family that night. And that would have been their virtue. If you went to Afghanistan, Pakistan, they would have collectively punished his tribe for his act. But
they were also they were making the analogy to the IRA when they would do their terrorism, and if there's any simping for their terrorism, you say, "Oh, you're a sympathizer." So I think it's really directed on the minorities or the certain groups that are perceived to be, the downtrodden, like blacks and other browns, but they wouldn't have done that silly clapping if it was a white guy or maybe.
That's you looking at it through a collective racial lens.
So then, based on what you just said there, then wouldn't the globalists then have trumped the Englishness in terms of being virtuous?
Globalism's problem is the globalism's threat that's menacing for the English or any other culture nation is it wants to dissolve it all into the ubiquity of nothingness. It wants to it wants to dissolve English culture into Pakistani culture, into Singapore culture, into Mick culture.
Yes, I understand, but talking about virtue, let me try and sell globalism. I would, being a globalist, I'd say, if I was, yes, those virtues about not wanting to victimize that individual, and I would say, well, let's just expand it globally. Yeah, so that there's no murdering, there's no killing, and that we all love everybody. Yes, and then nobody's a criminal.
But I see that's exactly what happened after World War II in the formation of the UN Charter of Human Rights, right? So since World War II, the UN Charter of Human Rights is that these rights should be applicable to everyone.
Right.
Globalism has hijacked that. And also it's an odds to a particular unique culture. So to Justice in the chat, no, I disagree. I don't ever compromise. Don't compromise to the ones I love the most, like one anyone else. No. So if I care about English culture being unique and English culture being worthy of protection and unique, and English culture being as precious as, say, Nigerian culture to Nigerians, then I cannot support globalism. Globalism would erode English culture. It would stop the English.
Okay, but by what you said earlier, then the globalists will say, look, you mentioned. So I asked you what are the bad or weak virtues of the English, and you said individualism.
Mm-hmm.
Then the globalists will say, well, look, come into our view, because we'll deal with that flaw within of the English virtues. We've got all the good aspects of Englishness, and we're throwing away all the bad aspects of Englishness. So therefore, we have a superior model.
Everyone has virtues and vices. So the vices of globalism is no individual uniqueness. So if I came from another culture and never been to England, I want to come to England and I want to see English people for holiday doing English things and being English. Globalism would destroy it. And if you love, say, England and the English, and you want England to remain English in perpetuity, just like I would want to say the Nigerians to remain Nigerian in perpetuity in Nigeria, then I cannot be pro-globalist.
Right. So the globalists will say, well, that is part of the sacrifice you have to make for the greater good.
Sacrifice yourself, man.
Sacrifice of these borders, of national values. Sacrifice that and think of us as the human race. We're all human.
Correct, I see. That's exactly globalism. Technically, in its definition, is the destruction of borders, the destruction of the nation state.
Yes.
So what globalism is
okay. So how are you going to get the moral high ground over that? What is your angle? Because it's about morality. How are you going to get the moral high ground over that?
But ICT, that's exactly what I was trying to put the message into the stream was that this is why the right are lost and why the right and left can't beat globalism, because they don't have enough power. It's not right. It's not nationalism that beats globalism or socialism, progressivism that beats globalism. It's the people united in populism that is anti-globalism. But that means the right have to lower their sword on race and the left have to lower their sword on justice. Otherwise, globalism, the null hypothesis, globalism wins.
Do you know why globalism is going to win?
It's the default position is globalism is going to win.
Is it? No, but I think they're going to win because they have the moral high ground. And if we're going to be honest about ethno-nationalism, the majority of ethno-nationalists, I don't really think that they care about race or culture. They're just disgusted by. Well, they're just disgusted by other people's races and cultures, and their ideology is mostly motivated by hate. Like I'm an ethno-nationalist. Like I think all cultures and all races of people are beautiful, and I want to preserve.
It's not so much in-group love. It's not so much in-group love as it's dominated by out-group hostility. And the problem with that is, one, they don't have enough numbers. Any nation, English, Western Europe, does in the US. Secondly, they no longer speak for their ethnos, so don't feel that way. And third, that makes it easy for the globalists to just go divide and conquer. But this is not a right-wing thing, Tiger. The left have also got a problem with globalists. The left hate the globalists. They hate Amazon. They hate all of these things. They hate them for environmental issues. They also can't win because they refuse to accept ethnicity and race. The left refuse to accept the fact that there's a thing called an English person. So the left also don't hate the out-group. They love the out-group more than they love the out-group more than they love their in-group. Whereas the right hate the out-group more than they love their in-group. And by default, the globalists just take their lunch money.
I watched one video by this one trans woman called ContraPoints, and she spoke about how nations just change and you're just going to have to accept it. And she said that, like, well, you know, the future is me, but just slightly browner because of all the race mixing. And I think the left is aware of race, and they know that, like, people are different, and, you know, people come and, you know.
No, the left, that's not true, Tiger.
Don't care. They actually don't care about race.
No, Tiger, that's not true. The left have, just like the right, like you said correctly, the right they love their own, but they also spend most of the time hating the other. The left have the mirror of that. They spend all the time loving the other and forgetting their own, hence anti-racism.
I don't know. I think a lot of lefties are hypocrites.
Left will stand with the Somali, the Pakistani, anybody but the English.
Right, but these same lefties live in the most whitest parts, so they're just virtue signaling. I highly doubt.
Sorry, you're gonna have to come back when the microphone works.
Okay.
Well, Jamie, that's right. I can
It sounded like a.
Yeah, but no, it's the same symmetry in the data as well. It's the same. Just go to the left-wing channels and see exactly what they do. They will love the other in lieu of their own. The other is always more important than the English. Whereas the English will say, oh, I care about the English more, but really what they're doing most of the time is hating on the black person and the Jew. And therefore the globalists can easily beat both of them. Hence, populism, which means you must unite the left and right, is the only last tool left to be anti-globalists before Western nations are just steamrolled.
So if I take a look at some of the lefty channels that I've seen, like Destiny, Lunabox, they mostly are talking about
English ones, good English one, Novara Media, Owen Jones.
Scottish, so I feel like he's close enough.
Yeah, Novara Media, Ash Sarkar, Owen Jones.
Ash Sarkar, I don't like. Look, any woman who says I'm literally a communist, you idiot. I don't take that woman seriously. I don't think she's sane.
Yeah, but all the left do. You don't have to take her seriously. With tons and tons of white English people there.
I've always found her really cringeworthy. Like,
that may be your personal thing, but she represents a proxy for the left. And the left are going to say, if you're racist to anyone, basically out-group preference over in-group, they refuse to accept there's a thing like a white English person. Therefore, they can't win because you can't undo a white English person.
Yeah, so no, but
white English person is going to be all blacks are bad.
So no, Ash Sarkar she's partly a troll because in one case.
Well, take out the way. Let's take Michael from the Bar Media. I don't want to get stuck on Ash Sarkar. Take Owen Jones, right? So Owen Jones represents the Labour Party. He represents.
Don't really listen to these guys. Sorry, dude. I mean.
Okay, well, if you listen to them, you see what the left. So I measured both sides, and you see the left are going to instantly side with the both people. Not that they care about the both people, but they don't want the other English people to be racist.
And also, going back to when you played that video with that Jewish man who lost his family, his wife and his children, was you playing that to show how a person had overcome hate?
Not just overcome hate, had used the highest possible spiritual value to transcend both hate and love.
But he was saying he was talking about how when he was referring to when he mentioned we, he was talking about Jewish people. He wasn't talking about anybody else.
He was talking about the whole world.
No. He was talking about Jewish people.
No, Jewish, but from his family to his community to the Jewish people to Africa and water projects to the whole world.
No, but he was saying Jewish people are good because they do good things for the world.
For everyone.
So it's
outwards.
us and the world.
No, outwards, from outwards. That's why I quoted Isaiah 42:6. He's a rabbi. He's Joseph's ex-rabbi, by the way.
Really? Oh, interesting.
Isaiah 42:6, I see 3. So the Lord has made us, has given us a covenant to be a light unto the nations.
Okay, right. Okay, so the light unto the nations. So let's look at this now. So, our Jewish values and the version of Jewish virtue exactly the same as so Jewish moral virtuous ideas are they exactly the same as the English ideas of morality and virtue?
The English values are predominantly derived from the Jewish values.
Pardon?
The English values are predominantly derived from the Jewish values.
Yes, but is there any difference between
the
English
and the
Jewish values?
Yes, the Jewish values are more, if you imagine, universally all-encompassing and much stricter.
Much stricter than the English?
Much stricter.
Okay, so therefore you have a clash.
Standard. Much higher
right,
standard.
So therefore you have a clash of...
Not necessarily a clash, one is a much higher standard of demands.
Yeah, so if one is a higher standard, you know, if you say, if one group says, well, our morality, our moral standards are higher than yours, then we must be superior over you.
Only if you want to look at it as superiority. You can look at it a different way. You can use the word responsibility.
Oh, responsibility. I mean, then you start moving into the concept of the father and the mother, and the parents and the children.
Right.
So it's like saying, you darkies down there, you're like the children, and we're the higher. After you, because you're
looking at the responsibility as a dominance hierarchy. Think of it as a responsibility hierarchy.
Yes. So where there's responsibility, there's power. Yes, responsibility and power. So if you have power, then you're responsible. Then you have authority. Yes, and then you are the parent. You're the authority. And everybody's below you.
No, but only if you're trying to look at the hierarchy of one of power. If you look at the hierarchy of one of virtue, then your responsibility means you must be a servant to it.
Yes, so you must serve the authority.
Correct. And that authority in the case of Jewish people is from God.
Sorry?
The authority is from God, right? It's in the Torah.
Right. So therefore the English morality must be subservient to Jewish morality, correct?
No. I think you're using the word subservient in the wrong way. It's a different, think of it more like, think of it as number of laws and rules you must follow and who they apply to. So in the case of Jewish people, if you're observant and strictly observant, think of who do we know? Someone like Joseph. He has 613 rules and laws to follow. And he cannot discriminate against anyone in the world. So you might say that's above it in the hierarchy, but it's a much more demanding standard.
Yeah, so therefore, if more is demanded, then there's more responsibility, yes, and greater authority and higher morality.
And more subservience to it.
Who?
More subservience to it.
To what?
Those rules. Joseph has much stricter dietary rules than you and I would have. He can't.
Yeah, I understand that.
He's a slave.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. But if we take that Jewish society that is follows the rules and has virtue, that society is held together in righteousness and virtue, and then there's another society.
There's a different set of rules.
That has a different set of rules.
Compared to Hinduism is a good one. Hinduism is what, 8,000, 7,000 years old.
Yes. So, right. So therefore, you have different societies, different groups with different sets of rules. and then the society with the best rules, the most virtuous rules, will have the authority over all the other societies.
I think you're
Correct?
conflating authority for power. They have responsibilities.
Authority. Say that again.
I think you're conflating. You're confusing authority for responsibility. That's why I didn't pick Islam or Christianity. I picked Hinduism. Hinduism is older than Judaism, but Hinduism also doesn't proselytize like Judaism. Hinduism is not going to make you. In fact, you cannot become a Hindu. So Hindus have responsibilities for all of mankind, and they have their in-group rules that only apply to Hindus. Now,
okay, so they have the responsibility.
Can you say Hinduism is more dominant than Judaism? Or the other way, no, you can't.
Ah,
I mean, you're kind of comparing apples to oranges.
Yeah, exactly. It's more like a network, right? As opposed to a tree.
Okay, but okay. So when you relate power, put the power dynamic into it, yes. Yeah. Is it not true that in order to sustain power, yes, for a group to hold power, they've got to be able to hold themselves together, hold their society together as a vessel to sustain power.
So maintaining, so maintaining a group over time. So if you look at a quick history, you can say the last 4,000 to 5,000 years, Babylon's come and gone, Greece has come and gone, Rome's come and gone, the Ottomans have come and gone. Which civilizations have survived? Judaism, Hinduism, the Chinese.
Right.
So therefore, if you're saying survival is the metric, first and foremost, then you have to look at which cultures have survived. And those ones have had the ones with the deepest principles of faith that bind their society. Sometimes they've had power, sometimes they've had no power. Sometimes the Jews have been persecuted, no power, sometimes they have power. Sometimes the Hindus were colonized, now they're very wealthy. So power is not the same as keeping your group intact. The problem for Western Europe is the post-Christian is when Europeans lost or losing their faith in Christ and God, it's obvious that the culture is going to go too.
Yes. So if the globalists secure the moral high ground, then they will have a truly global control of the world.
That's what they want, right?
Yeah, and so they're working towards that. And they've been working towards that for quite a while. Yes,
22 years.
Right. So the only way for them to achieve the moral high ground is to come across as more righteous than all the other forms of society.
Not necessarily more righteous. They can just win. You don't have to win by righteousness. You can also just win by power and not being righteous.
Yes, but the power, what is the relationship between power and righteousness, or the perception of righteousness? I'm saying you can only hold power by righteousness or by being perceived as righteous.
No, the Nazis held power with no righteousness. The Mongols had power with no righteousness. Power doesn't mean righteousness, but they didn't manage to hold the power. They lost.
No, watch this. Okay, I'm saying that righteousness, or the perception of being righteous, the power goes in that direction. So the Nazis were rising to power because people liked what they were doing. They thought what they were doing is good, and they thought they were looking after and protecting their people.
No, great kings in power have done so without righteousness. You can do it just by force. Power doesn't have to have a righteous basis behind it.
Yeah, but that force, how do you get the force? You have to get the force by organizing people.
Yes, power.
Yeah, and the way you organize people effectively and hold them together, as you said,
one way is righteousness.
Financially, politically, and culturally, you've got to be covering all those three aspects.
Yeah.
So you've got to be dominant.
No, so let me give you an example. The British, for example, controlled about 40 to 45% of their GDP, of their wealth came from the British Empire in India, and they didn't do it on a righteous basis. At the peak, only about 60,000 Brits controlled 400 to 500 million Indians with no righteousness, just power.
Yes, but that
The
power.
globalists,
No, but righteousness is a matter of perspective. From the Indians, they might have thought, "Oh, this is unrighteous." But the British were saying, "Look, we are civilizing you Indians. That's why just a few of us can control the whole of India."
Let me help you this way. Maybe I answer some of the confusion or the difference of view is. It depends on. It really, first of all, depends for an individual what your metaphysical worldview is. Where do you get the source of your righteousness?
Correct.
And there's only two choices. Either you believe in God metaphysically or you don't. If you believe in God metaphysically, then it doesn't matter what power can do to you. Power cannot stop a Christian martyring himself. Power will not stop an Islamic suicide bomber. If you don't have a metaphysical Christian or any religious worldview, then power doesn't need righteousness. It just needs power for power's sake. Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, Attila the Hun, Adolf Hitler did not need righteousness.
Yeah, these were all ideologies motivated by hate and pride.
Just power for power's sake, right?
Oh yeah, but they needed, like, well, in terms of Nazis, there was the convenient scapegoat, and the German people also like
justify it, but that's a post factor. I see one quick point here. One quick point is the globalists, because it's only 22 years old, and their stated goal is to take power for power's sake. Their post facto moral justification is universalism. The right to migration, the right to freedom, the right for sexual liberation, these expanded charters of human rights is what they want to use to colonize the English.
Yeah, I understand that.
And now, if you disagree with those codes, for example, righteous values, then they have no righteous power over you. They have no moral power. They just have socioeconomic fiscal power over you. So I, for example, disagree with globalism. I believe the English have the right to be English in England in perpetuity as an axiom. It's non-negotiable for me that the English should remain English in England in perpetuity. So they can't sell me, someone like me, something. But they suppose there's someone else who isn't patriotic, who would rather take the right to travel, the ability to do what I want, not really care about British culture.
Yes, but then the globalists will say,
have to be righteous about that.
Yeah, but then the globalists will say it's because you're selfish. Put away this Englishness because it's selfish and think globally. That's what they say, and then therefore they'll dominate the high ground. And then if you clash with them, I'll say, you want to fight us then, do you? Okay, well we've got weaponry and of dealing with the wicked. We can deal with the wicked.
No, correct. ICC, that's exactly, you're on the money. That's exactly what they are doing. If you look at the resistance, say the AFD, Italy right now, right-wing populism, religious nationalism, the opposition to globalism is people who don't buy that. Other people buy it. The average English person, for example, who might be in their 20s or 30s, doesn't give a shit about England, wants a good life, wants to go traveling on Ryanair, couldn't care if there were migrants down the street or his culture changed. That's the market for the globalists. But the globalists couldn't sell that to a patriotic person. They couldn't sell it to a religious person. A religious person rejects the material. The material is always subservient to the spiritual. If I believe in God, I don't care what you're offering me materially. If it doesn't fit to me spiritually, I couldn't give a shit how much material goods you offer me.
Yeah, but I think you're wrong there in that they will say, listen, we're globalists and we accept all religions. So if you want to be Christian, you can be Christian, but just, recognize who we are. If you want to be Hindu, we embrace all religions and we'll allow you to hold keep your temple and your mosque open as long as we say so.
No, I see. They can't. So, for example, if we say homosexuality is a sin or gay marriage is a sin according to my faith, and they say, it doesn't matter. It does matter, and it's non-negotiable.
But people are becoming less tolerant. Like there was a poll of more young people starting to dislike gay marriage because how it's been the LGBTQ plus has been jammed down their throats.
There's a little bit of kickback, but Jamie, unfortunately, the move is consistently towards progressivism in the younger generations in general. The conservative Zoomers are more conservative than ever before, but their numbers are dwindling.
Well, when I say
that's right.
Well, they're not like conservatives in the 40s. They just think that the progressive things have now gone too far.
There's some of that's rejecting, or because obviously my missus works with lots of latest media companies, brands and stuff. And no. The young people they're not going to let you bully a trans person or whatever. The Zoomers are very conservative, but the question is, what's the glue for the culture? Let's keep England. Let's keep England only England in mind, for example. What's the glue for the English resistance against globalism?
Well, ideally,
it's my land. I want to defend my land, England. It's just my people. I only want to defend my English people. And if I don't have God, then I'm just tribalism versus globalism. So I've gone back to tribalism. Tribalism is going to get its ass handed to him because over half your ethnos of your tribe will not choose your side.
Yeah, but I think the glue should be the law and accountability.
What? That's not going to stand. The law and accountability. Wait, so watch this. The glue is the law and accountability. The law, the globe is going to say, what law? Present the law. Let's have a look at it. What does that law look like amongst all the? How does that apply to the whole world? We're going to hold up your law to the whole world, and then say,
I see exactly. And here's where look at the most important resistance points. You know what the biggest resistance point is right now? The state of Israel. Israel has more international laws against it for the West Bank. The entire world is pointing UN resolutions against Israel, and Israel says no, thank you. The only two countries not signing up to the International Criminal Court any significance is the United States and Israel.
Interesting.
Yeah, because Israel is founded on the principle of being a Jewish state, and the United States thinks it can still be number one. But England is a signatory to over 15,000 international treaties beneath the Doffman Pact. Pat knows all about this. 15,000 treaties has colonized England. So if I was in power or serving English power, first thing I'd be doing is extracting myself from all those international treaties. The country has been split and stripped. Israel is an amazing case in point. Because Israel is holding out against the force of the world coming at it, saying you must recognize these Arabs in blah, blah, blah. You must recognize them. And Israel's going, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
Because the history of Israel is specific, right? It's formed for the haven of the Jewish people. The United States is doing the same thing. And the US is doing it just for the things you can hold on to number one. The US will fall first. Israel will not fall.
So what do you mean by what do you mean by fall? What do you mean by fall?
Yeah, what do you mean?
Say what, sir?
What do you mean by
what do you mean by fall?
Oh, the globalists will colonize the United States like it's colonizing Europe. It won't colonize Israel. And again,
why not?
Because Israel was founded on the principle that is fundamentally a spiritual story of ethnogenesis story of the Jewish people. 30,000 Jewish people fought on a piece of land, not because they were just Jewish ethnically. They didn't just fight for that little piece of land because they're Jewish ethnically. Now you can be a non-religious Jew in Israel.
Oh, so watch this then. Based on what you just said there, okay, so the Jews fought for that piece of land, and that piece of land has a history. Okay, so the Abrahamic faith. Okay, so the Abrahamic faiths combined, can they secure the moral high ground
unfortunately
over and above the globalists?
Yes. Yeah, you know what I'm working on ICT. Yes, but you know what that morality is going to be? It's not going to be left politics or right-wing politics. It's going to be based on devolving power to the people, based on principles of trust, on transparency, on where does the power live? Does the power live in a billionaire that you never see, running Amazon you never see? Or does the power live on your street with you and your neighbor? The way to beat the globalists is to take the power back down to the people on the land. And that is not a right wing, and that's why I was criticizing the DR here. The right are lost and the left are lost because their ideologies have no chance against globalism.
Right.
Globalism is going to It's going to kick their asses.
Well, okay,
So
yeah, go on.
Well, if you're trying to find like some kind of compromise with the left and the right.
Not a compromise.
No.
I think some of the chat was suggesting a compromise. Not at all. By flipping the board at right angles. By making it not ideological. The right are not going to lower their guard on race. Racism. The left are going to fight you in the culture of going anti-racism, justice. You cannot, the globalists are going to beat both sides that way. What does unite the people is trust, governance, representation, independent of your right or left.
Yeah.
That's why I suggested that the glue should be the law, so that the people at the top are accountable to the people.
Correct. The law would come afterwards once you're in power, but the principle would be, you're right, Jim, the principle would be transparency, accountability, responsibility, openness, governance, the devolution of power.
And reciprocity.
Reciprocity. You can't do what you want if it isn't what we want. It's something we can unite upon. It doesn't matter if you're left-wing and anti-racist. It doesn't matter if you're right-wing and racist. Both of you aren't getting what you want.
Yeah. So therefore, it's not the law, Kingston. It's not the law. What Ralph is selling is saying he's selling transparency as the highest. Yeah, transparency and accountability. Then the law will emerge, and laws will emerge from that.
The law will come from when you have power down the road. But you know the word that underpins both of things, I see to be a deeper word.
Say that again?
A deeper word that underpins accountability, transparency is trust.
100%. Yeah. Yes.
We don't trust those that govern us. They don't govern us in our interests. They don't govern us, even if I'm left-wing or right-wing, even if I'm political, apolitical. In Britain, if I'm black or white, left or right, poor or rich, middle class or lower class, in all cases, my trust has been violated.
That's right.
If I make it about race and ethnicity, if I make it about justice and progressiveness, I'm going to lose and keep losing.
Yeah, you lose to the globalists. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So now the question becomes,
I agree with you. Yeah, that is the only effective counter. That's the only effective.
It's a bitter pill to swallow, I see. How do you tell the right to give up their cherished values of fighting on race? How do you tell the left to give up their cherished values of fighting on justice?
Yeah, what you do is all you say is that, okay, we're not going to try and tell you to change your mind. So all we're doing is we're offering you transparency so that you can say what you're saying and everybody else can hear what you're saying.
No, and then ultimately, if you're technocratic IC3,
Pardon?
then you can go, ultimately, if you have a technological mind, you can say, look, the problem is not so much trust once we regain it, is how do you engineer a system where the trust itself cannot be violated? Let me give you an example. You and I can call anyone in the world right now, right? We can pick up our mobile phones and call anyone we know across the world. How does that work? Hundreds of phone companies with thousands of pieces of equipment all came together in unison to make that phone call work. How? No one's in charge.
Right.
No one runs the show. The protocols from the wire to the signal to the airwave to the machines, all designed to be non-corruptible protocols.
Right.
That's why the phone call worked. If I picked up and called, let's say someone, who do I know? I know someone in Somalia, right? I have their phone number. If I picked up the phone, do you know how many different things happened before 3 seconds later I spoke to the person I know in Somalia? No one runs that. No one runs that. But it runs flawlessly.
It's systemic.
Because no one can corrupt it.
Right.
So we want to take over the protocols, not the protocols of the elders of Zion, but the protocols of the elders of trust.
Right. Very good.
Afternoon, I'll be right back. Thank you.
Very good. That makes sense. That is an effective counter, I believe, to the globalists. Logically, it makes sense.
I mean, yeah, I think one of the follow-up questions that I would have is, how do you ensure through the protocol that, you can't violate trust? Because take web domains, for instance, you've got domain registrars, but there's been domain registrars where they'll knock people off of their registry because, somebody says something a little bit too spicy. Of course, there's people out there who have domains where they don't necessarily care what you talk about. But I mean, beyond that, I suppose it's really just an element of law too.
Say that again. It's an element of
law too, because with law, with a lot of domain registrars, I mean, you can always have your website seized by the feds if they don't like what you're posting.
Right. And then if the system is built so that it's completely transparent, then if when they make it that when they choose to have your website cancelled or whatever, then it's going to be exposed for everybody to see, and who made the decision and when and why. Correct. So that will keep them in check.
Right. I mean,
they can't hide.
As far as I know right now, they only give you really like a splash page saying like, oh, this domain was seized by federal agents. But beyond that, I don't think there's not like a log of that, at least not that I'm aware of. But then again, it's been 4 years since I looked into protocols for the internet because of my IT certificate. So I could be wrong here.
Right. Yeah. So basically, there would be a solution to that problem. The problem is still the solution is still transparency, because it's still going to have to go down to the decision maker. Who was the person, or who were the people specifically? What is their ID of the people who decided to block this person? And we trace it through, and then put our finger right. It was on these three people made this decision, and why. So that's dealt with through transparency.
Right. And the thing is like transparency is kind of one of those things that have really been hit with a lot of the advent of the internet. But then again, I mean, things have always been like secured by their obscurity. So which isn't really a principle now, but for security through obscurity, you basically make a hard way to get in by being so unknown that nobody cares about you. But the thing is, with global governance and global ownership of a lot of things, it's not really feasible.
Right. So, yeah. So, and plus, if
we'll come back, I missed something that said something wasn't feasible. That always catches my attention. What's not feasible? Let me show you. This is the 2023, the organization that does the deepest research on trust. It's called the Edelman Institute. I'll put a link in the chat on trust. If you look at what's happening, which is fantastic, this is the entire trust prompt. I'm going to show you some important things that principle to what we're doing. Let me show you a couple. Has this got the right diagrams? Hello, chaps. There's the one I'm looking for. It's not in this one. Bear with me a second, guys. Sorry, I think I'll just. Sorry, keep nattering. What was that, my man, for?
Did he get cut off?
I think you might have got. You might have gone for a second. I'm going to show you the trust indication. So let's go to 22. And you'll see that the problem fundamentally we have, and this is where both the opportunity lies for us, as well as the problem is it this one? Right. Let me just show you a couple of important pictures. And here we go. In a single, this is the problem. We have a fundamental social instability in the relationship between government, media, and the people that is accelerating distrust, causing polarization and social instability. This is not politically left or right. You can come at this and put on your left-wing axis or your right-wing. And this trust gap has just been soaring in the last 20 years since the globalists have taken charge. The solution to this is going to be to reinstigate a technological mechanism in which trust is put back into the people, because the metrics show you consistently that the trust has been broken. Trust between nations, trust between, oopsies, going the wrong way. Trust between, I'm trying to find a good one, where is it? Trust has declined for government media. Business is the only last trusted institution. No one trusts business. No one trusts what they see in the media. Government and media are seen as dividing people, not uniting.
Right.
So this cycle is the engine in which the globalists, are seizing control.
Right.
Because as that goes into the global corporations, into what they are effectively running, that division as part of globalism, you know you have no choice but to use Amazon. If Amazon says, sorry, we screwed up, there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
You don't trust the government spends your money correctly, and you don't believe a word you see in the media. These effects are just polarizing society, divide and conquer, pulling power upwards, away from people. But technologically, we know, I gave you an example of me phoning someone in Somalia. We technically know how to solve these problems in computer science. So the solution really is that we need a technocratic mechanism to reinstate trust in such a way that it would not be dependent on one person, dependent on one ideology. For example, I'll give you a simple example I see for you that this might not make much sense to a lot of people technically. This is the largest open source database code in the world. So if I went for something and typed, say, Log4j, so I know you guys will be, what the fuck do I have up to? This is the libraries of code that everyone uses code, that uses other code, that uses other code. Every time you see a message in your computer, ooh, something went right, something went wrong. This entire system is completely self-governing, uncorruptible.
Wow.
Thousands and thousands of people are using it all the time. Every change, look, was just changed by someone, just changed by someone, just changed by someone. The entire mix of this is completely uncorruptible, including its own protocols. IBM can't do anything to it. The United States Defense Department can't do anything to it. Otherwise, the stream wouldn't work. Your computer operating system wouldn't work. So now, if you imagine, you could do the same thing where the trust mechanics for society are engineered in such a way that those protocols are taken back to the people, then the globalists have a real problem.
Yes.
But now you can take the power back down towards the people, which is, after all, it's not 1488 to all the Nazi laughers in the chat. It's not 1488, it's 1688. Again, England, I see through. In 1688, the English fought the most important battle in the history of the world that made the claim that the English people are sovereign, not a monarch.
Right.
That the English people will have the right to rule themselves and no one else. The glorious revolution. So in a sense, we need a glorious revolution that says, how can Amazon, the United States Defense Department, or the United Nations tell an Englishman and American what to do? When did an Englishman and American sign a piece of paper that said they bequeathed power to a corporation, a government, or a multinational organization?
Right.
That's the real revolution.
Yes.
And you see again my frustration with the right and the left. The right go, race, get the Jews, get the blacks, get the Jews, get the no. The left go, no justice, no peace, fight the police, defund the police. Rubbish. You're both getting your lunch money taken. Huh?
I think the most powerful selling point for what you're saying is, hey, you can pick up your phone and call somebody on the other side of the world and talk to them. What is that?
How do you work?
Yes. And everybody's going to say, wait a minute. To be able to do that, that is righteous. That is obviously that comes from righteousness. It's got to be righteous.
It's not just righteous. It's the power has been decentralized and then distributed so that if the United States Defense Department or Apple or Samsung wanted to stop it, The only way they could stop it is by shutting the whole thing down.
Yeah, I know.
It's
But
all
no,
or
but I'm so sad that it still comes across, so all those words you're using, if you don't understand that, they still can say, wait a minute, the fact that I can call this person when I want to, that is good, that is righteous.
But
How
it's
it works?
personal power.
Yeah,
People
yes,
power.
yeah. And that kind of power, they will say, yes, the fact that you're offering that service to me, give me that power, that is righteous, and you must be a righteous person as well to do that, to allow that to happen.
Well, maybe righteous is one word we use, but the principle is deeper, isn't it? It's like, after all, what was the Enlightenment all about? What was the Glorious Revolution all about? Is that the baron couldn't come and take your wife or daughter and rape them, right?
Yeah.
That you didn't have to be on your knees to feed yourself and your family, right? Individual empowerment, right?
Yeah, but that still boils down to righteousness, doesn't it? Because
It's a
that
moral
brings in
thing.
morality, it brings in virtue, everything boils down to that. Is it universally good?
But look at your case, ICG, reparations in Africa. There's 1.5 billion Africans. At least 500 to 600 million of them can't feed themselves every day. On the other hand, the rich, wealthy parts of the world threw away more food than could feed Africa. Why is that?
Yes. Yeah, I understand.
Because the power is not just racial, ICG. The power is distributed badly. Then you'd see the Western world going, gosh, 500 million Africans are coming this way because they want to eat. But if they didn't have to, would they?
And also the idea that the reason there's so much immigration is because in order for certain people to remain in power, they have to drive down the values of where the darkies are, and encourage them to run to where the white people are in order.
That's a racial
Pardon?
lens. That's a racial lens. Globalism.
Yeah, but it's functional.
Globalism
It's
doesn't care about
functional,
race.
isn't it? It's functional.
It's literally entropy of power. Globalism doesn't care. The problem is the white people have industrialized, the nations have industrialized, the young people are comfortable. So you can't make more money out of young white people. The future economic value, globalism will just rush the resources where it's needed, which is 500 million brown, yellow, and black young people heading to white lands.
Yes, yeah. So
Globalism,
that
globalism
model,
doesn't see race. Globalism doesn't care about your race at all. That's the problem. Globalism doesn't give a shit that young Vietnamese, the young Indian, the young Nigerian is not from Oklahoma. If Oklahoma needs them, globalism is going to get them to Oklahoma. Now, that's shit if you're from Oklahoma, because you might have been there for 10 generations in Oklahoma, and suddenly you look around, there's a lot of Vietnamese people. You're like, where the fuck do these people come from? Right?
right? So so it's just the flow of capital.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, it's about that. I mean, it's interesting because I'm currently going to a DR associated event because that's really all I got at the moment. But I'm going there, mea culpa, and we're going to be trying to talk about forging common foundations and stuff like that, because a lot of the guys realize like, hey, rightward stuff is really busted. We're not seeing any returns on like this race talk sort of stuff. So I'm probably going to be like reviewing the stream honestly, and I'm going to see what I can take away and actually get injected into like their ideas, because there's a lot of enterprising young guys there, but the thing is like they're all just waffling about Austrian economics, and I don't want to
My Mises, yeah, my Mises, right?
Yeah, I don't want to be leaving them in the dust too,
Yeah, the problem is, I think the problem with the right is the irony for me is just bittersweet. Is the right care so much about ethno-collectivism in principle, but in practice they all behave like individuals.
Yeah. That's honestly the biggest part. And nobody can really answer the problem about white liberals too. They'll call them like traitors or whatever, but like, come on, like that's like most people don't agree with anything like you say here. So I like the idea of basically transparency, trust as a protocol. That's something that Cody Wilson did with, printing fun little devices. I don't want to get your stream taken down, but like essentially all across the world, you can't ban it because it's information as a protocol.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of if there's a movement to stop things, you can obviously go into the blockchain. It can't be blocked, right? But I think the problem is not technocratic. That could come afterwards. Blockchain is not need for other things. The problem is how do you get this into a person's hand that is not technical? Think of your average person who maybe struggles to use the settings on their iPhone. They need something that is just immediately useful for them that they don't understand. Like what was that app called? I've never had a dating app in my life. I don't date, but Tinder, whatever, swipe left, right, something. They need something uptick, downtick, right? On Twitter, they need something as easy as that has behind it the power, and then all you need is the momentum behind it to do so.
So all you need is a trust app. Then is that what you're selling? Is that what you'll be marketing? This transparency is gonna come into existence as an app.
Way past that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, way past that. Baked in, all that's baked in. Yeah, way past that now.
So when is this app going to come onto the market, and how is it going to come into the market?
We've taken certain recent events. We've taken a little detour because now we're going to apply, because of different events, we are booting up the artificial intelligence now to run across what we built. And we're going for a much larger round of capital before. We could turn it on now, but we're not turning it on yet. We're going to do one more thing before we turn it on, which means...
Oh, right. So recent events have made you... delay the release and then get more capital to boost up the project even larger. Yes.
Not so much. The more capital is on its way being sorted, but more importantly, we now believe we have enough to have artificial intelligence in it from the start.
Right, because I believe
so before it was based on the blockchain. But now you're going to attach artificial intelligence.
Correct. You see the success of ChatGPT.
Here we go.
We're training the AI now to be able to understand everything, so that just like you can ask ChatGPT things, you'll be able to say, "Can you tell me which people in what areas agree the most with me?" Right.
Yes, that's the way to do it. Yes.
Yeah, you should be able to do so. But unlike a free-form AI, these things will keep learning about an area of policy. So imagine little little agents. Imagine them assisting you all the time, and they keep learning.
Right.
Rather than you doing all the heavy lifting, you've got the equivalent of ChatGPT that only specializes in taxation, only specializes in Manchester, only specializes in a policy, only tracks an MP.
Yes, that's right.
So
the
race right now, I think,
is excellent.
Yeah, the race right now is who's going to build the first $10 billion AI company.
That's right.
And we have all the data for that, and now we have hopefully the right people on that as well.
Yes, yeah. You're right. You're right to wait to bring in, because when I saw what ChatGPT can do, it's like, that's got to fit in neatly with the blockchain.
The problem with ChatGPT and all those models is they're given lots and lots of unstructured data, right? They read everything on the web and stuff. This thing is going to be much more powerful because it has very rich formal data. So we're expecting it has our core data models, right? Has billions of data. It has much richer data to learn on. Meaning we expect it to be powerful than ChatGPT, but focused only on what we want.
Right. Interesting. It's looking good. Yeah. So you're right. You're right to put a hold on it, and then bring in your AI.
Well, we have no competition, so it's not really a great concern.
Say that again.
We have no real competition, so that's not. No, we don't. unless I'm missing.
I put my email in the back there for you.
That's one. Yeah, because I keep
2 emails.
I keep thinking I change it. I think that's it. Yeah. So anyway, that's all that stuff. So the right haven't really figured out what's going on. That was the point of this stream.
Yeah, it's looking good. Looking good. The plan is looking good.
Well, we'll see. The question really becomes, how many people do you need for it to viralize? And we thought about this.
Critical mass.
Well, we thought about this a lot. And we thought, would it be better for us to try to calculate that? Or would it be better to get the AI to learn and tell us?
Right.
Right. Welcome back, Jimmy. Oh, you're doing 4, my man. When's the conference?
Oh, so the conference is going to be starting this Friday. I'm going to be driving there, starting around noon your guys' time. So, I mean, I'd love to chat like more about this, honestly, like while I'm on the road, because I mean, I'm coming up on the end of my lunch break here, and I've got a lot of.
Yeah, I'm going to kill this. I'm going to kill the stream.
Yeah,
I'm going to kill the stream anyway. But yeah, DM me, man, and we can have a separate chat.
All right. Yes, please.
All right, guys. Let me just kill the stream. It's been fun. Have a good afternoon.
Yeah. Until next time.
Bye.
Take care.
And broadcast. Get out of here.